Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning, kits and cubs. I hope that the opening credits and everything went smoothly, because over here they were a little jumpy and they seem to be skipping, so I hope everything went well from your end. Good morning, kits and cubs, and welcome to Season 5, and if I'm not mistaken, episode number 858 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Friday, March 6, 2026, and I just realized I did not change the date in the description. I will have to do that a little later. And it is a very great day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronounced he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me here as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Have a bit of a mixed bag for you today in terms of content. Hopefully, it'll be a little smooth. I will readily admit that yesterday I was spending a bit more time watching curling, as it was the last matches in pool play to decide who was making it to the playoffs at the Briar, and therefore did not go as in depth into certain things as I have the last few days. Of course, the last few days there was also a lot of material, enough for a couple of 3-hour shows, which we probably will not be doing today. But we do have some stuff for you, because the Prime Minister is on his final leg of his Asia Pacific trip, which has brought him to Japan. We'll have a little bit more from his time in Australia, because former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull had a few things to say about the trip that are and about Australia's position on what's going on in Iran, which is very similar to ours in its first instances. We'll talk a little bit about, again, some of the reaction to what the Prime Minister said, some of the creative reinterpretation of his words, or obtuse, deliberate misinterpretation from the get-go. There has been more meat on the bones put on the statement about the hypothetical potential that Canada could somehow be dragged into this war, and how it is not inconsistent with anything that he has said before. And of course, today is the official start of the Paralympic Games. Opening ceremonies will be taking place in about 6 hours or so, even though some competition in wheelchair curling has already begun, mixed doubles. For some reason, Canada is not participating in mixed doubles wheelchair curling at Paralympics. Don't know what the qualification process was for that, but we do not have a team, which is a surprised me. And there's some training runs in downhill skiing events, but a lot of them got scrapped due to weather. So hopefully they will be able to, the athletes will be able to get their training runs in before having to actually have their competition. If there's time, there is news from the auto sector. There's news about our potential submarine purchase, and there's always news about Pierre PoiliOVER's "Hey, I can Carney 2 Eurotour," and maybe we'll get into that if there is time. If not, there might be material for a bonus Beaver at some point this weekend with that. And there was also Pierre PoiliOVER's very interesting interview with Peter Mansbridge on Monday that would be there. I'm a little hesitant to go into it full bore yet because I did not listen yet to his speech delivered, I think, at the Thatcher. I'm not sure exactly what it was. The Thatcher something. Just take a look at that very quickly, what it is. At the Margaret, yeah, the Margaret Thatcher Lecture. Sorry, let's say that. That was hard to say 3 times fast. The Margaret Thatcher Lecture at the Centre for Policy Studies in London. The other day when I was talking about Pierre's trip and how it may not be going so well, um, I might have been slightly harsh in that when I said, he's not talking to anyone of note. Um, I don't think he's talking to anyone who could help Canada right now in any way, shape, or form. So he's talking about being more collaborative with the Liberal government. He didn't go there and find people who can do that. It seems he might have avoided the Nigel Farages and the Christine Anderson types. And of course, he did get to give a lecture at, a relatively prestigious institution. And, Liz Truss was in the audience. So I guess he did get to meet with at least a former prime minister. But then again, when you look at the asterisk next to Liz Truss's um, name when you talk about prime ministers of the UK. Um, Not particularly a high achievement, let's put it that way, or at least if we're considering that as him spending time with influential leaders. Um, we're setting the bar a little low that you'd have to bring a backhoe in order to limbo under it. But still, right? There are images of him giving a speech at a relatively prestigious institution, just like there have been images of the prime minister doing so. So, probably not a complete and total bust, particularly for those who follow him, but certainly not. Let's put it, certainly not up to level or not what that trip could be if it didn't have all the feelings that it was rushed. And just to say that, we need to get you out there. Um, let's just get you out there. This is a trip that might have been able to benefit from more time, more planning, more logistics. Um, if he wanted to get as big an impact out of it as he could, but if goal was to just get images of him um, looking different and sounding different than the kind of dickish entity that we've known him to be for better part of 2 decades, then I guess mission accomplished. But again, that's a pretty low bar. So if we might touch upon that, or I might just want to have a time to listen to that and to take a listen to the full speech he gave before heading off on that trip. I've seen clips, I've read articles, I have the gist, but I usually like to listen to the full thing before I start commenting on it, rather than just on a line or two. One of the biggest lines that we saw when he was out over in Europe is something about green grifters, which if I just take that line or that expression on its own, I think I can pretty much guess what it is that he said, and that probably would not be very helpful if he's trying to look at himself as prime ministerial and trying to bring in business to Canada. Because I mean, if he's calling the industry green grifters, that doesn't look like it looks like we would be rather hostile to investment in that type of industry. So, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding the comments in the context, not just with a clip like I do for the prime minister. He deserves at least that courtesy. So I said I rather be a little more informed before I tackle it. So I'm not avoiding it. It's just that there's so much bigger news that's pushing him off the front page, and I guess he must be a little frustrated at that too. That he goes off to make his big splash, and then war in Iran erupts, and the prime minister. Well, he knew that the prime minister would be away signing these deals and basically pulling all the focus. So, you know, uh, at first I thought, that timing may have had something to do with the people he wanted to meet. If when I was thinking he might be meeting the Nigel Farages and the Christine Andersons, and just wanted to send messages to the red meat base. Hey, I'm still on your side and I'm still with you, without under the cover, let's say, of the prime minister being away on a big international trip and drumming up business. But it actually seems like this was an initiative based on his, sort of new campaign director, and how it is that he tries to position things to make him look um, different than what we know him to be. And in that case, it was probably overshadowed by world events, and in that sense, it probably didn't get maximize the bang out of the buck that they thought that they would be getting when they booked this trip in the first place. And maybe they had a sense that something in Iran was coming. We're hoping that he would be fitting it in before things started, but it didn't quite work out that way for him. But that's just speculation on my part. I have no way of knowing, and I have no insights into Mr. Outhouse's thinking, or nor Mr. Poilievre's, nor the party strategy here. This is just from the outside looking in, and potential calculations that could have been made, calculations I would have made were I in those in that position. And yeah, so we'll see, and we'll see if we'll have time to get back to get into that. But I just wanted to let you know that I'm not forgetting it. It is happening, and I do hope to have time to get to it. But like I said, more pressing issues and more important ones to cover than Pierre trying to do his, like I said, best Mark Carney imitation, which is, well, let's be honest, it's always going to be subpar because there's absolutely no metric whatsoever that we view as positive, on which, if you compare Pierre PoiliOVER and Mark Carney head to head, in which Pierre PoiliOVER comes ahead, right? He's everybody keeps on trying to describe him as a policy wonk, particularly on matters of finance, but he's definitely not a bigger policy wonk on matters of finance than Mark Carney, who's been the central banker for two nations and holds a PhD in economics, right? Um, I think Canada has already decided on leadership qualities. He doesn't. He doesn't match up. He certainly doesn't match up on abilities to explain complicated concepts to you in a manner that doesn't look like he's insulting your intelligence, or having to reduce it to slogans, or um, twist it and torque it to give it a sense that it doesn't. Um, you know, uh, Being able to communicate with us without constantly pushing on the fear and outrage button. That's another, yeah. So, there's a general charisma. Um, so there's a lot of metrics that he just doesn't measure up to the prime minister on, and him trying um, to imitate Carney, basically on this trip. I don't know how the campaign director could have thought that this was necessarily a good idea, because it creates an opportunity for juxtaposition, and juxtaposition reveals a lot. But then on the other hand, um, could he afford not to do it? I mean, this is his first trip away since ever becoming leader of the opposition. And I mean, you know, he's got to show a certain ability to be able to take on the responsibilities of the job of the prime minister if he ever wants it one day. And leader of the opposition that never travels outside the country. Probably not a good idea. But then again, you have to be um, careful about how you do that, because there is only one prime minister at one time, and you can't give the appearance that you're going out to speak on behalf of Canada per se, um, even though you are probably out there trying to build your own network, and you probably are out there making promises of what you would do should you become prime minister one day, which is one of those reasons that I always find funny when I make calls to hold the opposition to account, regardless of who the opposition is. Um, why are we not asking them about their transparency? Why are we not looking to, if the prime minister going to the Aga Khan's island when it was Trudeau was a terrible thing and warranted a lot of ethical investigation? Why was that not also the case for Rona Ambrose? Well, she's not the prime minister. She can't make deals. Okay, fine. But she was the interim leader, and should something happen, she could be the prime minister, or if she decided to stay and become the head of the party, she could be prime minister one day. And just because she's not prime minister now doesn't mean that she isn't out there promising people stuff and making pre-deals that would come into effect. So both, as far as I'm concerned, deserve the equal scrutiny, and the fact that one doesn't have the power to pass laws or to sign contracts on behalf of the name of Canada right away doesn't mean that they should be devoid of scrutiny until such time as they are allowed to do so. They should have the equal scrutiny, because there's nobody out there that doesn't believe that a leader of the opposition who has a legitimate chance of becoming prime minister, which was the case for Pierre PoiliOVER at the time when he was leading by 26% in the polls, um, that you get a free pass on scrutiny until such time as you become prime minister. What people do as leader of the opposition is deserving of as much scrutiny and as much questioning uh, as the prime minister, and what everybody does as a party leader is deserving of as much scrutiny, right? If we're really do politics right, and we really do believe in accountability, and we really do believe in transparency, then it shouldn't there shouldn't be one rule for the prime minister and one rule for everybody else, just because one happens to be prime minister. We should hold everyone to the same standard as we hold the prime minister, because every leader of every party, technically, except for the Bloc Québécois, I would guess, aspires to be prime minister. That's why they're in it. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on it. So I find that's one place where our media and our reporting kind of falls short, and it's a quick go-to for the partisans of any party. Well, he's not prime minister yet. It's like, focus on the person who is. No, I also want to focus on the person who is working very hard to get the prime minister out of the prime minister's seat so that they can occupy it when they're gone. I have no problem with scrutiny for both. All right. Let's take a look over here if there's anything. Wow, you guys are already chatting away. Let's see. We have Kit uncover the news here that says breaking. U.S. officials say Russia is giving Iran intelligence on the locations of American warships and aircraft in the Middle East, helping Tehran target U.S. forces. Well, I don't think that should be very surprising, giving news that we've heard recently that it has this for irony, that the United States appears to have asked Ukraine for help in its war on Iran. Yes, again, let me repeat that. The United States of America, Donald Trump, has gone to Volodymyr Zelensky and has asked for his help, because Ukraine has experience with interceptor drones. Asked for his help in Iran. Now, Iran is obviously an enemy of Ukraine because it has been helping Russia. And I'm guessing that Russia is probably not too happy that the United States is attacking Iran, one of Russia's allies. and certainly not happy that he's running to the Ukraine for help. But according to the BBC, and this is James Landale, the U.S. has asked Ukraine for help defending Gulf allies against Iranian drones, according to President Volodymyr Zelensky. He said Ukraine's partners had been reaching out and there had been, quote, requests from the American side. Zelensky said he had given instructions, quote, to provide the necessary means and ensure the presence of Ukrainian specialists who can guarantee the necessary security. Asked about the Ukrainian offer, U.S. President Donald Trump said, quote, I'll take any assistance from any country. Then again, Donald Trump would take anything from anyone. So, you know, even children from mothers, right from their arms. So, you know, Donald Trump is a bit of a taker. Let's put it that way. Earlier, Zelensky had made clear Ukraine would help on condition that its own defense was not weakened and that there were diplomatic gains for Kyiv. He suggested in particular that Ukraine would be willing to swap its interceptor drones for more U.S. Patriot air defenses to protect against Russian ballistic missiles. I'm not sure if a deal on that was indeed concluded. I would probably guess that if a deal on that was concluded, that Ukraine was indeed getting such Patriot air defenses, that probably one of the conditions of that deal is that Ukraine didn't crow about getting those U.S. Patriot air defenses because, well, that would make Donald Trump look weak now, wouldn't it? And Donald Trump apparently just can't look weak now, can he? Maybe that's why they had Carolyn Levitt going out and making this really anti-Ukraine screed, which I thought was really weird because she was doing it on the same that news about the United States seeking Ukraine's help was coming out. I don't know, man. Running to a podium and telling the world that, how would you put it, that the United States might be doing better if it hadn't given so much of its top stuff to Ukraine, kind of suggesting along the way that probably didn't deserve it. Is probably not the best move. And let's just have a little moment here. And remember that context of this is, of course, having brought Zelensky in to a meeting at the Awful Office and having J.D. Vance criticize him for not being grateful enough and asking him if he had said thank you yet today. So on the day that Donald Trump is asking Ukraine for their help with interceptor drones to fight off what Iran is doing, this is what Carolyn Levitt thought was smart to go to a podium and say.
However, the president in that post was pointing out that, unfortunately, we had a very stupid and incompetent leader in this White House for 4 years who gave away many of our best weapons for nothing, for free, to another country very far away by the name of Ukraine. So the president was pointing out how that was an unwise decision, but nevertheless, don't doubt the strength and the might of the American military. However, the president in that post was pointing out that, unfortunately,
don't doubt the strength and the might of the American military as they run to the nation they belittled for help. And then go to a microphone and, yes, belittle the former president, but saying that it was very unwise of us to give stuff to help Ukraine on the day that you are asking Ukraine for help. I sure do hope that President Zelensky was able to extract some very interesting concessions as a result. And maybe that I would suggest that probably would not make Vladimir Putin very happy. So I'm not sure if the love affair is over or if Donald Trump is just that transactional that he believes he can ask Ukraine for help and that will not affect his relationship with Putin in any other way. Volodymyr Zelensky has a tweet out there that says, "Our priority is to do everything to end the war. We will continue the diplomatic process when our American partners are ready to work as we agreed, bilateral formats with them, trilateral formats with Russia, as well as work with Europeans. Right now, practically all of the world's attention is focused on the situation around Iran, and no matter how long the hostilities last there, we must be ready to resume diplomacy at any moment. That's exactly how the Ukrainian team works." Yeah. And then another one here. We received a request from the United States for specific support in protection against Shaheds in the Middle East region. I gave instructions to provide the necessary means and ensure the presence of Ukrainian specialists who can guarantee the required security. Ukraine helps partners who help ensure our security and protect the lives of our people. Glory to Ukraine. So, yeah, um, no mention whatsoever about what they got in exchange for this help. Just, we're always willing to help. Glory to Ukraine. But the Ukraine helps partners who help ensure our security and protect the lives of our people is probably the meaningful sentence in there. And it would sure be nice to know what's behind that. Hmm. Hmm. The article goes on. The war in the Middle East has raised fears Ukraine could suffer if its allies are distracted by the conflict. There have also been concerns about a potential shortage of interceptor missiles and Russia benefiting from rising oil prices, the proceeds from which are a key source of funding for its war effort. Zelensky has acknowledged these risks, but also seems keen to take advantage of the crisis to further Ukraine's national interest. He has spoken to counterparts across the Gulf in the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, and Kuwait, and is promising what he calls concrete steps to help them defend their military bases and civilian infrastructure from Iranian attack. Possibly, President Zelensky was able to extract some concessions from the United States, but maybe also some commitments of assistance from these Gulf nations. Yeah, sure, we'll help you defend yourself against the retaliation that Iran is raining down on you in order to try to drag you in to this war. But we have our own little war going on, and we're gonna need your help with that too. And you guys have these very deep sovereign wealth funds, or some of you do at least. It would sure be nice if some of that was put to our use. But we're happy to help. Quote, "It's clear what the main request to Ukraine is," Zelensky said on social media. "Anyone who has faced Iranian strikes encounters a serious challenge, Shaheds, which are difficult to intercept without the proper expertise and adequate weapons." He added, quote, "It is in our common interest to help people defend themselves and to restore stability in critically important supply routes. Partners are reaching out to Ukraine for assistance in defending against Shaheds for expertise and practical support. There have also been requests from the American side. Ukraine has for years been subject to strikes by Russian-made Shahed drones, one-way unmanned aircraft based on an Iranian design. The irony of the U.S. asking for help has not been lost on Ukrainians who have suffered from U.S. President Donald Trump's erratic policy towards their defense against Russia's full-scale invasion. The U.S. has ceased direct military support under his administration, but continues to provide vital intelligence that helps Ukraine both defend against drones and missiles and strike targets deep within Russia. And I believe I saw something yesterday that indicated that for the first time in many months, Ukraine regained more territory than has lost, according to the Kyiv Post here. It says Ukrainian forces liberated more territory than they lost during the last 2 weeks of February 2026, marking the first net territorial summer counteroffensive in 2023, according to a report by the Institute for the War. ISW. The ISW analyst said available evidence suggests Ukrainian troops have retaken roughly 257 square kilometers since January 1st. And according to the report, Ukrainian forces achieved a net gain of nearly 33 square kilometers between February 14th and February 20th, followed by another 57 square kilometers between February 21st and February 27th. The last time Ukraine recorded similar net territorial gains was during the summer of 2023 counteroffensive, when Ukrainian troops regained 377 square kilometers in June, 257 in July, and slowing to 1.47 in September. ISW said, or notably 2 to 3 orders of magnitude less than the first 2 months of the summer. In an interview published on March 3rd, Ukrainian President Zelensky said Ukrainian forces have regained 460 square kilometers since the start of 2026. I won't go into too many details, Zelensky said, but today I can congratulate our army first and foremost, all the defense forces, because as of today, 300 square kilometers have been liberated. ISW said that mapping methodology may underestimate Ukrainian advances because analysts depict the furthest confirmed extent of Russian control until open source evidence shows that Russian forces no longer hold those positions. The think tank also pointed out that the front line in Ukraine has become increasingly porous, with the lack of continuous defensive lines complicating assessments of territorial control. So yeah, another little bit of good news for Ukraine there. Continuing on with the original article here. Now, after years of Ukraine asking for help, the tables have been turned, and it seems clear Zelensky wants to use this moment as a diplomatic, military, and financial opportunity. Ukraine may hope for U.S. gratitude if it can help American allies in the Gulf, especially Saudi Arabia, and may also hope to win favor among Arab nations, some of which have traditionally had close links with Russia and have tried to avoid taking sides in the Ukraine conflict. Delegations from the Gulf have already arrived in Kyiv for discussions. One source said some had been told to stay in Ukraine's capital until they agreed to a deal. The UK is said to be looking for ways of helping Qatar. Zelensky may also hope that by giving Gulf partners adequate air defenses, he will discourage them from using expensive and scarce Patriot missiles to bring down cheap drones. Ukraine faces a shortage of Patriot air defenses, and Kyiv will not want too many diverted and wasted in the Middle East. Zelensky told journalists on Thursday that about 800 Patriot PAC-3 missiles had been used already in recent days, more than Ukraine has received during the entire war. And that's when I think Kit Hugh was saying, what the war is very expensive. If the United States and Israel have already used more 100 Patriot PAC missiles in the first 6 or 7 days of what's going on in Iran, than Ukraine has received during the entire war. They're going through them pretty quickly, one would suggest. Maybe at a rate that's too fast for them to replenish. He suggested a swap. We would like to quietly work with countries, both those we can name and those we cannot, to obtain for ourselves some of the deficit missiles for Patriot systems and transfer the appropriate number of drone interceptors. But any help Ukraine gives will be qualified, Zelensky said in a social media post. Of course, any assistance we provide will only be on the condition that it does not weaken our own defense in Ukraine and that it serves as an investment in our diplomatic capabilities. Ihor Federico, head of the Ukrainian Council of Defense Industry, told the BBC that Ukraine could scale up interceptor drone production to up to 10,000 a month. But any discussion of deliveries to partners abroad, however, will require political approval at the highest level in Ukraine, he said. And even if Ukraine's top political leadership approves such transfers in the future, Federico warned that it would be much harder to provide allies with the training and expertise they need to learn how to use air defenses effectively. Quote, the weapons are just plastic and metal without teaching and training, he said. We can send you these goods, but what will you do with them? How will you apply the weaponry? Who will teach you? At the moment, our training centers in Ukraine are totally booked by our armed forces as well as our civilians. So, yeah, just a little bit of interesting plot twist there. Did anybody see that coming? Kidargosi Aker says, good morning from the treadmill and good morning to you. Gonna cover the news again. Epstein was trafficking Russian women of his blackmail network, including Prince Andrew. Well, that's not a surprise. Russia connection is definitely not a surprise there. Kit Linda, I'm shocked I say, to hear that Russia is giving Iran intelligence. Oh, God. Wow. Kit Saucy. Russia has helped Iran in the past, was the reason why they are having issues in the beginning. Indeed. Let's see. Yeah, see, Kit Saucy as well. Russian women are some of the most trafficked women in the world because they want to leave Russia or the territories they control. That's not new. Indeed. Indeed. Little stuff about Skippy here. Kitsasi, Polyev quoting Ronald Reagan while being in the UK to promote Canada is truly fascinating. Kit Linda, it's going to be very interesting when Skippy and the PM come home and we can compare the results of both trips. Yes, particularly since Pierre PoiliOVER has been basically saying for quite a while now, results, please. It's going to be interesting to see the Prime Minister come back with a certain number of deals signed. And, Pierre PoiliOVER saying, well, I was in the same room as Liz Truss one day. Of course, as we said on the show, when Pierre initially was planning to launch on his election campaign, his tax policy was very similar to that sunk Liz Truss, except that we were in a bit, Canada, given that we were in a better fiscal position than the UK was, it would take us longer to notice how bad it was for us, because the numbers were good enough that the ill effects of putting in such a policy could be hidden for a certain number of years before they started becoming a little more clear. Let's see. Kit Grace's Beach Life says PP seems to be getting more Canadian coverage than the PM is doing deals. Yeah, that's normal considering that about 90% of our print press is US based owned, right? And their goal is to try to pump up Pierre. Every time Pierre has one of these makeovers, all the press rushes in to wipe the slate clean from the last 20 years and, give him a fresh start yet again. Oh, he's looking prime ministerial now. I was like, again, we'll believe it when it lasts. We'll believe it when it lasts. A lot of people that are a little more predisposed to see everything that Pierre does in a negative light are kind of saying that Pierre PoiliOVER is doing his best Jamil Giovanni imitation. Says the host as he sips tea. Meow. We approve. So yeah, lots there. Get Linda. Ooh, the memes about Zelensky having cards are fantastic. Yeah, turns out he had a few cards, didn't he? Kid Uncover asking me if I'm going to watch and review the movie Hoppers. I am definitely interested in it. Yes, I mean, there's a beaver and a bear. It might be autobiographical. Who knows? Maybe we were called to get a little more information about us, to give the characters, to flesh out the characters. No, they didn't call. But I'm going to say they did. Oh, my. Well, there we go. Okay, so you guys are really definitely writing. And then, yes, of course, in the United States, we heard the news also of the gnome being relocated to another position within the government. And she's going to be replaced by, I think, a guy that's called Mark Wayne Mullen or something like that, which is a name I've heard before. And if I remember correctly, wasn't necessarily in the most glowing terms, but I'd have to go back and look at that again to see what the reason for that was. But I don't think it doesn't look like they replaced a 20-watt bulb with a 50 or 100 in this case, from what I can tell. But obviously, she had become too much of a liability now and needed to be shuffled out. Of course, because Donald Trump is never wrong and never makes a mistake. She did an excellent job as he's pushing her out. So, talking about the trade stuff, uh, the Prime Minister, on his last stop on his Asia Pacific tour, was in Japan. And here it says from the Prime Minister's readout, Canada is focused on what we can control, strengthening our economy at home and diversifying our partnerships abroad, including the Indo-Pacific. Japan is an over $5.5 trillion market, the world's fourth largest economy and Canada's fourth largest source of foreign direct investment. With nearly $40 billion in bilateral trade, Canadian businesses in Japan are leaders in financial services, forestry, and automotive sectors. And 70% of the cars manufactured in Canada are made by Japanese companies, supporting thousands of high-quality careers for Canadian workers. In a more dangerous and uncertain world, strengthening this relationship presents enormous opportunities for greater security, stability, and prosperity for both our peoples. Today, the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, traveled to Tokyo, where he met with Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae, probably. I have to figure out what the proper pronunciation of her name is. She's the first female leader of Japan in its history, by the way. Following their meeting, the leaders released a joint statement and announced an ambitious new comprehensive strategic partnership between Canada and Japan across defense, energy, critical minerals, trade, and technology. This partnership will reinforce collaboration between our two countries, attract more capital into Canada, and give greater depth to opportunities to our growing relationship. Canada and Japan share a robust defense and security partnership spanning the Canadian Armed Forces Operations Neon in the Indo-Pacific, joint and multilateral exercises with the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, cooperation on cybersecurity and emerging threats, and a shared commitment to achieving a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. To bolster our defense security relationship and build up our defense industrial cooperation, the leaders announced 3 bilateral MOUs or memorandums of cooperation, MOCs, that will strengthen collaboration on international emergency response, joint Coast Guard exercises, and action against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in the North Pacific. Additional strategic planning, bilateral exercises, and joint operations and training exercises, including joint sails between the Royal Canadian Navy and the Japanese Navy, as well as the potential for Japan's participation in Canada's Operation Nanook. Strengthened cybersecurity and cyber defense cooperation through a new Canada-Japan cyber policy dialogue, including information exchange, resilience building, and collaboration on cyber threats. And greater defense industrial collaboration between Canada and Japanese companies on frontier technologies, including artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and space security to build our defense supply chains, increase capital flows into defense sectors, and create high-paying careers. And for those who might be wondering a little bit what Operation Nanook is, briefly from the Department of National Defense, it says Nanook Canadian Armed Forces signature Northern Operation comprised of a series of comprehensive activities designed to exercise the defense of Canada and to secure our northern regions. Operation Nanook takes place each year across Yukon, the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, and Labrador. It features up to 5 deployments throughout the year. And there are ones, there is Operation Nanook in Nunalivut, Operation Nanook in Tatijit, in Tugalik, in Nunakput, and Takunik. So those are various regions in the north where they are taking place. During Operation Nanook, the Canadian Armed Forces exercises the defense and security of Canada on our northern regions, improves our ability to operate in a challenging environment requiring unique skill sets, improves coordination with Indigenous, federal, and territorial governments and our northern partners, and responds effectively to safety and security issues in the north. And then if you're looking at things like, for example, Operation Nanook in Takunik is the newest serial introduced as a concept development operation in 2025. It was designed as a pan-domain training and capability development operation focused on enhancing the capacity of the Canadian Rangers to act as Canada's eyes and ears in the north and to integrate with other organizations' sensors and surveillance capabilities. And when I say Takunik is the newest cereal, that's cereal, S-E-R-I-A-L, and not the type you put in the bowl. So that's what's going on with those things. It continues on to say here, also, the leaders announced plans to build on and expand their strong trade ties, and Canada and Japan will instruct their officials to identify immediate investment opportunities, including through pension funds, increase efforts to support Japanese automotive manufacturers in advancing their decarbonization efforts in Canada through multiple pathways, leverage existing memorandums of cooperation, including those on battery supply chains and industrial science and technology, to deepen bilateral cooperation and catalyze economic gains for both countries, modernize the Canada-Japan Joint Economic Committee, building on 50 years of close economic cooperation to capitalize on emerging opportunities such as semiconductors, batteries, AI, clean energy, critical minerals, and resilient supply chains. Deploy trade delegations, including a Team Canada trade mission to Japan in 2026 and an upcoming visit to Canada by the Japan Business Federation to unlock new commercial partnerships for Canadian businesses and investment opportunities in Canada. And to bolster energy security and to leverage Canada-Japan's complementarity in supply, Prime Minister Carney and Prime Minister Takaichi committed to expanding bilateral trade and cooperation on energy projects, including liquefied natural gas and liquefied petroleum gas, recognizing their important roles in energy security and the energy transition. This also underscores Canada's unique position to meet demand for low-emission energy, thanks in part to our enhanced methane regulations. Increasing cooperation on clean energy technologies, including nuclear technologies, hydrogen, energy-efficient industrial processes, as well as carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Harnessing innovation in clean storage, grid modernization, and clean energy integration. And it also says that Canada and Japan are both leaders in advanced technology and trusted partners in the responsible development of AI, manufacturing, and the research and development. To reinforce this relationship, the two countries will deepen cooperation on critical minerals, including joint work to secure reliable supplies, enable value-added processing, and support diversified manufacturing ecosystems. This includes collaboration through G7 Critical Minerals Production Alliance. Increase partnership opportunities on semiconductors, AI, cybersecurity, batteries, hydrogen fuel cells, clean technologies, quantum technology, fusion energy, and other strategic sectors central to economic competitiveness. Advanced joint R&D in innovation, cooperation in new and emerging technologies, building on this year's 40th anniversary of the Canada-Japan Agreement on Cooperation in Science and Technology, and intensified collaboration between our two countries' innovation, venture, investor, and startup ecosystems, including by accelerating greater two-way investment, strengthening links between accelerators and corporate innovation networks, and supporting joint commercialization in emerging technology sectors. In addition to these efforts, Canada and Japan will increase Arctic scientific and technological cooperation, as well as joint efforts on climate change and environmental observation. To that end, the leaders welcomed the signing of a bilateral memorandum of cooperation to conduct joint scientific activities in fisheries and marine research, including stock assessment, climate and ecosystem science, advanced marine technologies, and researcher exchange to support sustainable resource management. In Tokyo, the Prime Minister will meet with the leaders of major Japanese firms across automotive, advanced manufacturing, clean and conventional energy, infrastructure, and technologies. He will position Canada as a reliable trade partner and a competitive destination for new investments. The Prime Minister's visit to Japan follows his latest engagements in India, where Canada secured over $5 billion in commercial agreements, and in Australia, where Canada elevated the bilateral partnership in critical minerals, defense, and AI, and secured up to $10 billion in investment commitments. By re-engaging with global giants and deepening our partnerships with our closest allies, Canada is creating high-paying careers at home, diversifying our trade, attracting massive investment, and building a stronger, more sovereign, and more resilient Canadian economy. And that is from the desk of the Prime Minister. It's well, maybe not the desk of the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister of Canada's own internet site here. There's a little bit of what the Prime Minister said in statements when they're with the leader of Japan, and I'm going to show this to you. I would like to show you what it is that the leader of Japan did say. However, the live setting did not have translation, simultaneous translation for us. So unfortunately, at least what was being showed on CPAC, and I was not able to sadly get a translation for you. But it seemed, at least in terms of body language and whatnot, that it was indeed very warm. Prime Minister Takaichi was brought in because there had been some turmoil in Japan a little bit in terms of leadership, and she had been brought in, I think, as the interim leader at one point, and then called or was chosen as the leader of the party, and then called an election relatively rapidly, similar to what happened in Canada, and secured a rather impressive majority in that election. And she is considered to be more on the conservative side of things there. So, and a lot of people are saying that Mark Carney is the best progressive conservative prime minister we've had in a long time. So there was probably some seeing eye to eye there. Also, Japan living close to a hegemon, China, that repeatedly threatens it. We have certain things in common with regard to defense. So I have, like I said, it seemed from body language, expression, smiles, tone of voice, that things were indeed rather warm. But here we go with what the Prime Minister has said. I think I'm going to, if I can, give you full screen for that. Yeah, on this one. All right.
続きましてカーニー首相お願いいたします。
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Takaichi, for your gracious hospitality and for your leadership. It is my great pleasure to return to Tokyo. It's an honor to return for these meetings. The first bilateral visit by a Canadian Prime Minister to Japan in 10 years. 今日は Takaichi Sore Daichi, I'm not finished yet. Sore Daichi to aite orishiku omoimasu. Nika kanke ga masumasu choko naru kyoto o nagatte imasu. That's, as I said, gracious hospitality. Thank you, Sanae. I would like to begin by congratulating you on your decisive electoral victory, a grand slam worthy of the Hanshin Tigers. We in Canada are hoping for similar results from our newest Toronto Blue Jay, Kazuma Okamoto. After all, Canada and Japan have learned from each other as we've grown for over a century. Les relations entre le Canada et le Japon sont riches et variées. Nous avons des échanges culturels soutenus et notre relation commerciale est substantielle et prometteuse. Avec l'accord de partenariat transpacifique global et progressiste, nos entreprises et nos travailleurs bénéficient d'un libre-échange entre nos pays. Nous sommes des partenaires importants en matière de sécurité. Canada and Japan are close economic, security, and G7 partners. Our armed forces patrol the Asia-Pacific together. Two-way trade is over $40 billion. Japan is one of Canada's largest investors. Nearly 3/4 of the vehicles manufactured in Canada are made by Japanese companies. And over 10% of the food imported into Japan comes from Canada. We do much, but we're ready to do much more. And that's a common theme of our government. So my government was elected with a clear mandate to build boldly with a speed not seen in generations. And we're acting. We've cut taxes on incomes, capital gains, and housing. We have a super deduction in place for write-offs of all investment, a host of clean energy tax credits. We're catalyzing $1 trillion in investment over the next 5 years in energy, AI, ports, and new trade corridors. We are doubling government investment in defense-related R&D for next-generation capabilities in AI, quantum, robotics, autonomous systems, and we discussed some of this in our meeting. Our defense industrial strategy will unleash over $500 billion in investment over the next decade. As the Prime Minister mentioned, our partnership has 6 priority areas. First, most importantly and fundamentally, we are enhancing our security and defense cooperation through information sharing, technology transfers, cooperation in maritime security, and establishing a new cyber policy dialogue so we can rapidly detect and deter cyber attacks. Secondly, we are strengthening our economic security with robust supply chains and strategic technologies, consistent, Prime Minister, with the insights of your book, what you've long argued about the importance of strategic economic sectors. That means reliable access in space-based communications, semiconductors, rare earths, SMRs, fusion, clean energy technology, AI, and sovereign cloud. As part of this, we're expanding our existing cooperation within the G7 Critical Minerals Alliance to secure reliable stockpiles and build our processing capacity. The third priority is to strengthen our already significant trade and investment relationship to a new level. And that's close collaboration to connect Trans-Pacific Partnership in the European Union trade bloc, something we'll discuss this evening. It's having trade missions, such as the Team Canada mission that will be coming here in the next few months. And it's having discussions, as I will have tomorrow, with CEOs of Japan's most important companies to discuss new investment opportunities in both our economies. Fourth, we're building energy and food security. The Prime Minister and I have directed our officials to identify opportunities to collaborate in LNG, in nuclear technologies, in hydrogen, as well as other clean technologies. Canada is in a position where we can double our LNG exports within the next by the end of this decade, and double again by the end of the following decade. We already export $6 billion in agri-food and seafood products to Japan, and we can do much more. Fifth, we are expanding our cooperation on the Arctic and climate, strengthening our scientific and technological collaboration, and supporting innovation in net zero industrial processes and clean power generation. And finally, most fundamentally, the new Canada-Japan comprehensive strategic partnership will expand people-to-people exchanges, academic and cultural exchanges, from scholarships to new youth mobility, cooperation mechanisms, and beyond. Ces progrès s'appuient sur les liens de longue date entre nos peuples. Près de 130 000 Canadiens et Canadiennes d'origine japonaise habitent au Canada. Plus d'un demi-million de Canadiens se rendent au Japon chaque année. We have much in common, and we're enriched by each other's cultures, perspectives, and histories. This is a strong foundation on which we can build something even better, more prosperous, more ambitious. Finally, Prime Minister, as you know, there's a Japanese proverb that articulates the opportunity ahead of us in these difficult times globally. Ame fute ji katamaru. After the rain. Thank you. After the rain, the ground grows firmer. Adversity tests our strength and builds it. So today, we are taking our first steps on firmer ground together. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you very much.
So there we go. That's the Prime Minister in Japan. Of course, the Prime Minister attempting some words in Japanese. Some kids in the chat already knew that, but the Prime Minister, and of course this went over very well. He seemed to have very much endeared himself to everyone that was there by reciting those words in Japanese. It would seem that for a time in his career, Mark Carney worked worked in Tokyo for the investment banking firm Goldman Sachs in the 1990s and picked up some proficiency in Japanese. And therefore, he was able to use it here in this case. It says that he was welcome, according to the CBC, welcome to the Kantai, Takaichi's official residence, with a grand modern building in the heart of Tokyo by a military band playing O Canada and the Japanese national anthem. And when I mentioned that Takaichi, I can't remember, Takaichi, okay, there's a typo in her name in the article here. She won 2/3 of the seats in Japan's last election, the largest number ever won in the country's post-war history. So this was definitely a major victory for her in that election. It seems that, according to John Paul Tasker of the CBC, that this new agreement is effectively an expression of goodwill and a pledge to work together more in the future. There are no dollar figures or extensive details attached to these proposed initiatives, but still, Prime Minister framed the new bilateral arrangement as something significant. So that's what we have here. That I was seeing if there's a little bit of extra. A lot of the stuff is the stuff I've read before. Here. It says here that one topic of discussion while Carney is in China could be his recent deal. While Carney is in Japan, could be his recent deal with China to allow some 50,000 Chinese meat EVs into the Canadian market in exchange for tariff relief on some farm and seafood products. On the surface, the deal has nothing to do with Japan, but the visit could be in part about reassuring leaders in Tokyo that the agreement with China is a narrow deal on certain sectors and not about supplanting its relationship with Japan. Historically, Canada's strongest Eastern ally, said Veena Najibullah, the Vice President of Research and Strategy at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. Quote, I think Japan was watching the China trip with a little bit more trepidation than other allies would, she said. Japan is a big investor in the Canadian auto sector, inviting Chinese investments that will have implications for the Japanese, she said. China and Japan don't get along, and there's been some recent tension driven by Japan's pledge to defend Taiwan if attacked, and subsequent Chinese economic and military retaliation. Also, the leader of Japan has no problem whatsoever referring to certain historical events that China would rather Japan not talk about anymore in public. Let's just put it that way. Quote, so much of our focus has been, of course, on President Trump and his economic coercion, but Japan is still dealing with a very difficult situation with China. I think for Canada, we need to show democratic solidarity, and we need to have some frank conversations with them about our Indo-Pacific strategy and how it's evolving, said Najibullah. Asked about possible Japanese concerns over Sino-Canadian relations at a pre-departure background briefing with reporters, a senior government I guess that's a senior government official, said the Chinese EV deal has, quote, nothing in there that should cause concern to Japan. Indeed, there's no visible sign of tension between Canada and Japan. So there you go. What else does this article say here? Senator Peter Boehm, a former top diplomat who now chairs the Red Chamber's Foreign Affairs and International Trade Committee, said this quick trip to Japan is about getting FaceTime with the new G7 leader. The next time they speak by phone or meet in person at a summit, there will be some familiarity. Quote, Japan is a very important partner for us. It's one of the larger economies in the world. It's the third or fourth largest, depending on the day, he said. The leaders need to get to know each other. And I will tell you, Kits and Cubs, this is the third typo now I've seen in this article that I need to try to fill in on the fly. There's certain things are lacking here in editing. That's how Najibullah sees a trip like this too. It's about paying respect to a fellow G7 leader and acknowledging how important this partnership really is for Canada. Quote, it's a relationship that is so stable and so positive that it's at risk of being neglected, and I think we can't afford to do that, she said. Amid uncertainty over the future of Canada-U.S. trading relationship, Canada has made it its top priority to broker deals with other countries to diversify trade and shore up the economy. So there you go. Let's see, what else do we have here? If there's anything else in this article about that. Nope. There we go. A lot more is a little bit about more about the trip in Australia here, which may come up later on the show. So yeah, there we go. Prime Minister visiting Japan, basically, how would you put it? Wanting to, I guess, you got to water the garden, right? You can't just neglect the garden. So making sure that the relationship still stays in good stead. There is, I saw something today, and maybe I can find it here. There is some potential with regard to what's going on in Japan, uh, also with related to the auto industry, which has to do with our negotiations with the United States, because, as mentioned, I think 70% of the cars built in Canada are built by Japanese automakers. And according to a news report by Abigail Bimman of CTV News, it says Japan has made clear that continued support in Canada's auto sector is contingent on something not entirely within the without not well. Yeah, let me try that again. Ay, ay, ay. But Japan has made clear that continued support in Canada's auto sector is contingent on something not entirely within our control: a successful renegotiation of the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement. It is currently up for review, and U.S. President Donald Trump has mused about getting rid of it. On CTV's Question Period, Japan's ambassador to Canada, Kanji Yamanuchi, told host Vashi Kapelos continued access to the U.S. market as provided for under CUSMA is essential for current and potential increased Japanese investment into auto manufacturing in Canada. Quote, "That is the critical condition," Yamanuchi said. "Canada is, of course, a G7 country. Your GDP is one of the top 10 countries, US $2.5 trillion. But you know the size of the US market? $30 trillion. 70% of cars manufactured in Canada are made by Japanese companies, which provides thousands of jobs. Quote, all those cars made in Canada, of course, sold in Canada, but at the same time exported to the US market," said Yamanuchi. A senior Canadian government official speaking on background to reporters on the plane to Tokyo said Canada is confident and committed to maintaining automotive relationships with Japan, but would not get into details about how. Dominic LeBlanc, the minister responsible for Canada-US relations, is in Washington today discussing that review with the United States Trade Representative Jameson Greer. So, yes, little thing to be aware there is Canada is attempting to pursue some automotive investment into Canada from China, but particularly from Korea and Germany specifically. And of course, that's somehow being linked to the submarine purchase deal that we are looking at, where the top two contenders that are remaining are indeed a bid from Germany that also has some connections to Norway, and the bid from South Korea, and in those instances, um, um, like I said, we're trying to attract that business, but we also don't want to lose business from Japan as well. And the reality of the United States saying that we don't have anything they need and don't want our cars would affect, if Donald Trump pushed that to the extreme that he could, would affect the quality of our deal with Japan, and would definitely make it harder to attract increased foreign investment from them if that market no longer exists for the cars that they build here, at the same time as we're trying to attract investment from other nations. So yeah, that's one thing before reading the article that I hadn't actually considered when doing the analysis. Well, yeah, what happens to our relationship with Japan on that, should we no longer have the U.S. market to which to export our vehicles. Now, on the other side of that ledger, however, the United States is so moving away from the green push in the automotive industry. California, of course, is never going to follow, but is so moving away. I think recently, again, the reduced obligations, I think it is, or eliminated obligations for fuel standards I think. Again, California is not going to follow because they wish to continue being able to export. But it says here, as of early 2026, the U.S. is transitioning to less stringent vehicle fuel economy standards, with proposals to reduce to the previous administration's targets to roughly 34.5 miles per gallon, down to 50.4 miles per gallon, aiming to boost gas-powered vehicle sales. These rules, managed by the NHTSA and EPA, also include regulations for gasoline composition and renewable fuel mandates. So as the United States is backsliding that way, and as Canada and Mexico are increasing their bilateral trade and are shipping less stuff to each other on U.S. soil, there could be opportunities Canada and Mexico's auto industry to work together if they are shipping parts and autos to each other by sea rather than over U.S. land. And that might be Mexico could become a bigger export market for us, and we could be a bigger import market for what's made in Mexico if we're trying to move away from the United States. But the United States is going to find itself in a position if they continue down this path, particularly if Canadians start by doing the boycott of cars built and assembled in America, in the United States of America, like we've done for alcohol. The common thinking, or at least the line that I've been hearing, if you're listening to Klaus Kellerman, who understands this economic stuff more than I do, is that the American auto industry, by selling cars in the United States, basically recuperates its operating costs, and what it sells in Canada represents their profit. So if we stopped buying those cars, automakers in the United States would be suffering, and we've seen that there has been suffering. We've seen that Stellantis, for example, trying to vacate some of the future of the auto sector, selling its battery plant to a Korean outfit. We reported on that a few weeks ago, maybe about a month or a half or so ago. So they're leaving that, and the United States could find itself in a position if they lower their standards to meet what Donald Trump is saying, to increase the sale of gas-powered vehicles rather than any other, of having vehicles that are only suited for the American market, and vehicles that could not be exported to other nations, let's say to Europe, without having been subjected to the carbon border pricing mechanism, and of course, vehicles that might be of a size that are not conducive to be sold in Japan or Korea or Europe, and could be creating a situation for themselves where they could destroy their own auto industry over the long run, and us being able to diversify where our foreign investment in the auto industry, so long as we can find markets to which to export the autos that are made here. And if we have to replace the U.S. market, it would be a significant amount of automobiles. That's why I'm looking first to Mexico. But we would have to choose the models that we make here to be models that would be fuel efficient enough and of the size and utility that are required if they were to be exported increasingly to Europe or to other nations. So maybe if we get that Mercosur deal with the other Latin American nations, they might become new export markets for Canadian-made automobiles or something like that. But we are going to need to find new export markets for them, and therefore the products specifically that we're going to make have to be products that not only serve our needs, but can be used and serve the needs of other nations that we would like to export to as well. So there could be a little more upheaval in the auto industry than originally expected, because that was one angle I'd never considered. What happens to our deals with Japan if we no longer have the U.S. market to export them to? And I guess that a lot of that depends on Japan's willingness to make more investment in the U.S. market with regard to that too. If Japan is not willing to make investments in the U.S. market as much, that could have an impact on their auto industry as well. Exactly. There you go, Kit Elaine is mentioning that Stellantis was in partnership with the Korean company in the Next Star plant, and Stellantis just sold their shares to their partner, and they sold them at pretty much fire sale prices. They just wanted to take that off their books because, like I said, it was not conducive to them having good relations with the President of the United States for the auto industry on their home soil. All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? We could uncover saying breaking no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. Trump says, well, that means you just got the United States involved in a forever war because Iran will never surrender, especially unconditionally, and especially never to the United States. So yeah. Boy, we are in trouble. We are in trouble. All right. Also, since we're talking about automobiles, Doug Ford and Mélanie Joly, Premier of Ontario, and our Minister, I believe, of Industry and Minister responsible of Canada Economic Development, had a lot to celebrate, according to the Government of Canada news website. It said that there was a media advisory that at around 11:45 a.m. yesterday, the Honourable Mélanie Joly, Minister of Industry and Minister responsible for Canada Economic Development for Quebec regions, would be joined by the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, and the Honourable Vic Fedeli, Ontario's Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, to participate in the grand opening of Nexstar Energy's new lithium-ion electric vehicle battery facility. Woohoo! So according to the CBC here, it says high-ranking, and this is no specific journalist assigned to this one. High-ranking provincial and federal officials doubled down on their commitment to Nexstar Energy's Windsor battery manufacturing plant at the plant's grand opening on Thursday. The sprawling operation was initially built to serve the electric vehicle battery market. However, that focus has shifted to energy storage systems because of a slumping EV market, which will probably start to bounce back now that we have a new subsidy program, which I believe kicks in sometime in April. I'm just going to take a look at that, see when it starts again. See, as of February 16th, Canada has launched the Electric Vehicle Affordability Program, EVAP, replacing the previous program. This new program provides incentives of up to $5,000 in the first year for battery electric and fuel cell vehicles, and up to $2,500 for plug-in hybrids, with an application portal opening March 31st, 2026. So it would be, one could assume that once that portal opens and people start applying, that there will be a bounce back again, because there was a significant drop in EV sales that was completely attributable to the fact that the incentive program had disappeared, and people expecting that there would be another one. So why buy in the interim and risk the chance of having the incentive just pass you by? So there you go. And specifically, these are for vehicles that have a final transaction value of $50,000 or less, but there is no price cap for EVs manufactured in Canada. So if your EV costs more than that, but it's manufactured in Canada, you can still apply. And this is eligible for vehicles that are made in Canada or in countries with whom we have free trade agreements only. So they would not apply to EVs either made in China, the 49,000 that we are importing there, would not apply to that. And of course, the incentives are applied at the point of sale by the dealer when that becomes open. Also, since we're talking about deals coming through, on March 1st of this, so a couple of days ago, some of the elements of our trade deal with China came into effect, because March date was the first that China was the date set in the agreement that China would suspend 100% tariffs on Canadian canola meal and pea imports, and halt 25% tariffs on lobster and crab imports. And this continues through the end of 2026, at least at the beginning. probably a good chance that as relationships keep warming between us, that will be expanded. But for now, it's at least until the end of this year. It says here that Ottawa expected Beijing to lower canola seed tariff to a combined rate of 15% from the current 84%. A probe into Canadian canola is set to conclude on March 9th, the Chinese Communist Ministry has said. So after that, we're probably going to get shortly after that another announcement once that probe is over. One thing we do know is that Chinese buyers have been booking Canadian canola cargoes for March already. That gives me a pretty high degree of confidence that they're going to follow through on the reduced tariff rate, said Evan Rogers-Pay, director at the Beijing-based consultancy Trivium China. And what else do we have here? Canola, oil, and pork were also not mentioned in the statement, but Beijing could still announce further adjustments by the March 1st deadline, previewed by Carney. I don't think those further adjustments have any further adjustments have come before the deadline. So, but we can look to maybe after that report comes on March 9th, maybe there'll be other announcements that come coupled with the one that would be announced at that time. But yes, those tariff reductions have kicked in starting March 1st. So that's good. That will bring some relief to fish harvesters and to canola farmers throughout the country. So we have that happening here. Let's see, what else do we have about the EV plant in Windsor? Let's see what else it says. Despite the change, the shift to energy storage systems because of the slumping EV market at the time, both Ford and Jolie said that they were happy on Thursday. Quote, they have lines all the way down this 4.25 million square foot facility class operation. I absolutely love them, Premier Doug Ford said. It was every single penny, and if they decide to expand, we'll put more money into it. The provincial and federal government have pledged up to $16 billion in subsidies to Nextar. It was originally a joint venture between automaker Stellantis and LG Energy Solutions. But Stellantis recently sold its 49% stake to LG, which could open up battery markets beyond the automaker. So that's what Kit Lane was stating here in the comment earlier. So a good deal in that sense, because yes, I'm guessing that under the original deal, the batteries were destined to go into vehicles made only by Stellantis. Now, this could be batteries that goes into any vehicle whatsoever that are assembled on Canadian soil. Roughly 1,300 people have been hired at the factory so far, with another 1,200 expected once fully operational, according to government and company officials. In November 2025, CBC News reported that the federal government has paid out at least $530 million in subsidies to Nextar. Mélanie Joly, the federal industry minister, declined to say how much public funding Nextar has now received. But she praised the plant's technology and workforce at Thursday's celebration, attended by officials from Windsor to South Korea. Quote, we have the critical minerals. We now have one of the most productive and modern battery manufacturing plants here in North America. I will defend every single job linked to this facility, and we want more jobs, and you know that, and they know that, and we will get to 2,500. Just last month, Nextar reported it had already produced 1 million battery cells since cell production kicked off in November, and production on battery modules started in 2024. Quote, the opening of the Nextar Energy Battery Facility is a milestone for southwestern Ontario, creating thousands of local jobs and benefiting workers across our province's automotive and advanced manufacturing supply chains, Ford said in a media release. Fideli said he looks forward to factory unlocking, quote, new opportunities for Ontario's leading industries. By leveraging LG Energy Solutions' technological expertise alongside Windsor's manufacturing, Might Nextar Energy has solidified its position as a cornerstone in North America's battery ecosystem, he said in the statement. Denise Lee is the chief executive officer of Nextar. He says he's proud to create what he calls, quote, long-term economic value for Canada. At the same time, we are helping power the next generation of energy that will future-proof Canadian industry at scale, Lee said. This is a unique Made in Canada success story and one we can all be proud of. So there you go. Very interesting there. And since we are talking about Jolie and Ford here, there is also some issue or moves on them with regard to investment by Hyundai in South Korea. And this is by Rob Ferguson of the Queen's Park Bureau for the Toronto Star. Premier Doug Ford is promising to roll out the red carpet for South Korean automaker Hyundai to build an assembly plant in Ontario following record Canadian sales last year. He made the pitch Thursday with Federal Industry Minister Melanie Joly in Windsor at the official opening of the Nexstar battery plant owned by LG Energy Solution, with South Korea's industry minister in attendance. Surging sales show Hyundai needs a strong presence here, said at the sprawling battery factory, which had been a joint venture for LG and Stellantis, the global automaker, parent company of Chrysler, that sold its stake last month in a pullback from its electric vehicle strategy. Quote, "It's as simple as that," added Ford, who has also urged South Korea-based Kia to open a plant here. "I strongly encourage them to come to Ontario. We'll work with them. We'll support them." Sales of Hyundai vehicles and its luxury Genesis brand in Canada last year were up 11% from 2024 and to 154,405 units, led by the Tucson. The province and the federal government have been putting more pressure on Hyundai recently as auto jobs have dwindled in Ontario. In a controversial move, Stellantis is moving production of a Jeep model to Illinois from its Brampton plant, and General Motors closed its Ingersoll factory that was making the BrightDrop electric delivery van. Joly has made the push for a Korean auto assembly plant, part of the federal negotiations for a new fleet of submarines. One of the final bidders is South Korea's Hanwha Oceans, a consortium that includes HD Hyundai Heavy Industries. "I can't comment what's going on, but I'll be clear, we want a car plant," Joly told reporters. Hyundai Canada did not immediately reply to a request for comment from the Star. South Korean Industry Minister Kim Jong-un, who is in Canada to support the submarine bid, did not comment on the entreaties from Joly and Ford, which came after he made comments at the Nexstar event. The $5 billion battery plant, slated to receive $15 billion in production subsidies from the federal and Ontario governments over the next 10 years, began operating in November and employs 1,300 people and could need 2,500 workers at full capacity. With Stellantis selling its 49% stake to LG, the factory will continue to make batteries for electric vehicles, including for the automaker, and is pivoting to larger-scale electric storage batteries to secure more business. "This is what's beautiful about Nexstar. They can shift," said Ford. 4 years ago, he hailed the plant as the cornerstone of next-generation automotive employment before the EV market slowed. In terms of government aid, Economic Development Minister Vic Fedeli said Nexstar has, quote, "honored all of their commitments to date." Stellantis took a global $35.5 billion write-down on its EV plants last month, saying another sign that things are probably not going as well for the U.S. automakers, and that there's probably a lot of bravado coming from the United States. So, you've got that going on. And in the background to all of that, there was some talk with regard to the submarine deal that the Canada might be looking at splitting the deal. Instead of buying 12 from one nation, might be buying 6 from the bid from South Korea and 6 from the bid from Germany. That is imported by Norway, maybe an attempt to get to the Germans to put more investment in auto in Canada as well. Both of the bidders said that they would be open to such a deal, but both of them have also said that it probably would be able to impact their ability to, or the amount or the modalities that they would invest further in Canada, because when you're building for 6 rather than 12, you make certain losses on economies of scale. It would appear that this is something that the government of Canada, despite what was going, maybe this was being floated, but is not looking to do ultimately to split the contract. According to the Canadian press, says here, "If you didn't already know about the heated competition to decide who will build Canada's next fleet of submarines, a trip to the Conference of Defense Associations Institute annual gathering in Ottawa would leave no doubt. Germany's ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems is the event's main sponsor. South Korea's Hanwha Oceans is also a key sponsor, and each firm has set up a miniature model of their subs in the Chateau Laurier Hotel for passing armed forces members, bureaucrats, and cabinet ministers to take a look at. Canada's Secretary of State for Defense Procurement is touting the submarine contract as a success story as the government tries to reverse a trend of slow procurements that deliver behind schedule and over budget. Quote, "Open, fair, transparent has always been the mantra of defense procurement, and no one ever thought to put timely in there," Stephen Fuhr said during a keynote at the event on Thursday. He also rejected media reports suggesting the government might split the contract with Hanwha providing vessels for the Pacific coast and TKMS supplying the Atlantic side. Quote, right now as we speak today, we're looking for a partner. One, he said. He also said, quote, things can change. Vice Admiral Angus Topshee, the Navy's commander, was also asked about a possible mixed fleet on Thursday during the conference. Quote, for submarine acquisition, it's always going to be the most efficient to have a single class of fleet. Could we do it differently? Sure, he said. He added that Prime Minister Carney was pretty clear when he said last fall that Canada won't split the contract. Quote, and so until the Prime Minister tells me otherwise, we are planning for that, he said. Fuhr described the newly created Defense Investment Agency as the solution to the problem of having too many large government departments involved in procurement. Quote, that old process drove 1 million authority gates to reduce risk, and then we just got into risk avoidance instead of risk management, he said. The agency is currently under the umbrella of the Public Service and Procurement Canada. Fuhr said it will be a standalone agency within several months with authority over any procurement worth more than $100 million, though he added that floor will be lowered. As for the submarine deal, he said it could be the biggest procurement we ever do if we get all 12 machines and we throw in infrastructure, and that things moving at a speed no one thought it would move at. TKMS and Hanwha submitted final proposals to the government this week. TKMS CEO Oliver Burkhart told the Canadian press this week that the company would be open to a mixed fleet but would not recommend it. Quote, don't underestimate the side effects, especially from the industrial package, he said. Burkhart noted that TKMS has a deal with a Quebec company to build some segments of the submarines in Canada, should it win the contract, but said it's not clear if it would ramp up production locally for a fleet of 6 or 8 subs instead of 12. The Liberals have said the accompanying industrial and economic benefits the two firms are promising for Canada will be a deciding factor in choosing a winner. Industry Minister Mélanie Joly has said she wants to see automotive production as part of that final package of benefits. In a written statement, Hanwha Ocean's president, Charlie SCEO, did not take a firm stance on the idea of a mixed fleet, saying his focus is on presenting the strongest solution for Canada. Quote, what matters most is that Canada receives the submarine capability it needs on a realistic schedule, with strong value for taxpayers, and a plan that can be delivered and sustained for decades, he said. The statement also noted Hanwha signed 5 new agreements with businesses and universities in Canada on Thursday for a variety of work on submarines. Dozens of similar deals have been signed by both firms. Burkhart said he expects the Canadian government to make final decision on the contract by the summer. And as you know, another division of Hanwha had invested a certain amount of money in the Algoma Steel company in order to have a plant that would build a specific type of steel products, and has committed to purchase a certain amount of those as well. So Hanwha has been definitely investing. Also, according to the Globe and Mail, I think it is, there was some reporting on that, on the progress of this deal, and saying that the goal of this new agent, as the conservatives keep on saying, well, what are the liberals doing? All they're doing is building new bureaucracies. But they're not getting anything done. It seems that this Defense Investment Agency that's been created is indeed working as expected and is surprising people. According to Pippa Norman of the Globe and Mail, it says here that the companies bidding to build Canada's next submarine fleet said they would support any decision by Ottawa to split the multi-billion-dollar contract after submitting their final proposals in the procurement they say has moved at a speed previously unseen in Canada. Gee, we need to build more at speeds previously unseen. That's a Prime Minister Carney line, isn't it? Something like that. It seems that it is happening. Completed bids for the order of up to 12 diesel-electric submarines were due on Monday, with a decision expected from the federal government by the end of June. The Canadian Patrol Submarine Project, which was established in 2021, has moved at a record speed since its initial request for information closed in February 2025, with 25 responses. In August, the federal government narrowed the finalists down to Germany's ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems with its Norwegian partner Kongsberg Defence and Aerospace, and South Korea's Hanwha Ocean. Irrespective of who ends up building the subs, all three companies said this pace at which Canada has moved through this massive procurement is unlike anything they've seen before from the country. The procurement itself is no small feat. Oliver Burkhart, Chief Executive Officer of TKMS, said the average submarine order for the company, which has signed contracts for more than 180 of the vessels, is between 2 and 4. With Canada's procurement and other orders for Norway and Germany combined, the company could be looking at building 24 submarines within the next 15 years. This I've never seen, he said. Add the fact that the procurement is being overseen by Ottawa's newly created Defence Investment Agency, designed to handle procurement valued at 100 million or more, and you have a lot of firsts for Canada in one go. Compared to anything he's ever worked on before, Glenn Copeland, head of Hanwha Defence Canada, said, quote, this one is absolute lightning speed. Previously, Mr. Copeland served as former senior officer in the Royal Canadian Navy and general manager at Lockheed Martin Canada. Timelines that typically last 6 to 8 years were cut down to less than a year, and the number of pages in the government's request for proposals was slashed from its typical hundreds to only about 58 pages, Mr. Copeland said. The economic approach to the contract is also unique, likely owing to the world in which Canada finds itself making the purchase, and it may set a new standard for similar deals moving forward, Mr. Burkhart said. With U.S. President Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs on Canada and rhetoric about the country becoming a 51st state, Mr. Burkhart said Canada has been forced to look well beyond submarines and the broader industrial benefits it can glean through this procurement. Quote, this is a new dimension of debating what's beyond a defense deal for a country. For example, both the Europeans and South Koreans are speaking with Canadian companies such as Maritime Launch Services and Nordspace, who we were talking to yesterday, to determine how the bidders could support Canada's efforts to establish a sovereign space launch capability through this procurement. See how I mentioned a few months ago when I started to look at the major projects and how Mark Carney was talking about other things, that you could start seeing the links between the projects and how they were connected? This is a perfect example of this. Right here, get the submarine contracts, try to get more investment in the auto industry while you're in it, and then try to get more investment in Canada. Oops, hey, maybe guys, you could help with sovereign space launch capability. The links get connected. The final bids submitted by the two contenders range from around 1,000 to 1,500 pages each. Over the next 4 to 6 weeks, the federal government officials will be busy reading them and returning to the companies with questions. According to a Globe and Mail report on Monday, Ottawa held out splitting the contract worth more than $24 billion, buying an equal number from both Europe and South Korea to reap industrial benefits from both bidders. TKMS, Kongsberg, and Hanwha said they would respect Ottawa's decision to split the order and could still fulfill the contract if it was only for 6 submarines each. But Mr. Burkhart cautioned a reduction in the order size could come with risks, such as changes to Canadian industry's share of participation in the company's submarine program, which is operating jointly with Norway and inviting Canada to join. Quote, it could be a political decision, Mr. Burkhart said about the potential splitting of the contract, but let me say that very frankly, is this the time? Neither bidder has been told the contract will be split, and now we seem to get news from, Mr. Fuhr, who's the Secretary of State for Defense, that they probably will not be. Mr. Copeland said Hanwha would rather be contracted to build all 12 submarines, but would wholly support Ottawa's decision to split the contract. Quote, we believe it's a pretty good chance for us to still prove our technology and deliver systems and platforms to Canada on time and on budget. Kjetil Reiten-Maihra, Executive Vice President of Defense Systems at Kongsberg, said Ottawa should pay attention to the training and maintenance costs that come with having multiple platforms, but the reduced order size wouldn't change anything for the TKMS partner. So there you go, kids and cubs. Some progress in the auto industry, in the submarine industry, and on space launch. All at the same time, with all these deals somewhat being interconnected. On to other topics, kids and cubs. The Prime Minister's comments recently about what's going on in Iran and the seeming intent of a lot of people to reinterpret his words to meaning, or to create the impression that he doesn't know where he stands, or that he's contradicting himself, all of that. There is an account on Twitter that I'm a big fan of which I'm a big fan. It's called goes at Geneva Trade Law. That's how I registered despair as the handle. A very, very smart person that I am trying to get as a guest on the show. Based on his employer, he may or may not be able to. I've sent him some examples of our interviews. I think that there might be potentially either a reputational thing. We've let him know that we certainly would not want to violate any of his employment contract or terms if we got him as a guest. And hoping that he says, yes, we have wonderful exchanges on the Shitter account. But again, permission to be able to come on a show like ours is sometimes difficult to obtain, but we hope we can get him because his commentary is brilliant and substantive, and he knows what he is speaking of here. He looked at Melissa Landsman's comment that we read into the record yesterday, and that I will put up again for you to see here. Melissa Landsman take on what the Prime Minister says. We support it. We're upset about it. We think it's bad, but also we might join in. All right. That is the lazy version of it, because, if you had to go out and explain the subtleties and the nuances and listen to all the words the Prime Minister said and only the words the Prime Minister said, and then put them all together and actually listen to them with good faith, well, that would require work, wouldn't it? And the Conservatives don't like work. They're essentially lazy. Kid Becky says, Geneva trade lawyer is a friend of mine. Maybe you want to put in a good word for us then? Let them know. Let him know that he is safe on our platform. That we would not do anything whatsoever that would be embarrassing to him. We would love to have him as a guest. Really, really smart man. But he was able to put what I have said in many, many, many minutes very succinctly. First of all, about Melissa Landsman's comment, he says, this is what happens when your front bench is driven by 20-year-old influencers limited to 240 characters. The rest of us with cognitive abilities beyond cactus understand the complexity of the situation and can process both nuance and flexibility. But for the voluntary dunce caps, he is able to explain Prime Minister's position in 4 very easy to understand points. 1, we support efforts to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions. 2, we weren't consulted, neither was the UN, and don't agree with 3, an illegal undeclared war that has put 140 schoolgirls under the rubble of their school. 4, a NATO country has been targeted already. And if a NATO country has been targeted already, and there is an Article 5, and that NATO ally, which is not the United States, invokes Article 5, then we have a duty, which is why the Prime Minister, when asked the question, will you definitely rule out Canadian participation, could not do that. Could not do that. Because we could get dragged into it, either because a NATO country that is not the United States is being targeted, or because some critical allies of ours, we have some allies in the Gulf states, may be targeted, may move from showing the restraint that the Prime Minister stated and was very complimentary about the restraint that they've been showing by using their capabilities for defense only, and maybe want to be a little more proactive in having those missiles and drones and whatnot not come their way. And I'm just going to take a look, because I should know this off the top of my head. and I am not. I have not. Can't remember it off the top of my head. Which country it was? Oh yeah, Turkey. Of course, should have figured that. According to Al Jazeera, Iran denies firing missile towards Turkey after NATO interception. So yes, if Turkey, a NATO member, is being dragged into this and decides to invoke Article 5, then we would have to come. And maybe that has something to do with why Iran's armed forces have denied firing any missile towards Turkish territory, insisting that Iran respects the sovereignty of Turkey, they said in a statement carried by state media. The Iranian statement on Thursday comes after Turkey's Ministry of National Defense said on Wednesday that a ballistic missile fired from Iran towards Turkish airspace after passing Syria and Iraq was destroyed by NATO air and missile defense systems over the eastern Mediterranean. It was not clear where the missile was aimed. Quote, a ballistic munition launched from Iran, which was detected passing through Iraqi and Syrian airspace and heading towards Turkish airspace, was engaged in a timely manner by NATO air and missile defense assets stationed in the eastern Mediterranean and rendered inactive, the ministry said in a statement on Wednesday. It said there were no casualties or injuries, adding that Ankara, which is the capital, reserves the right to respond to any hostile actions against it, while warning parties to refrain from escalating the conflict. In an evening address to the Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the country was, quote, taking all necessary precautions in consultation with its NATO allies and was issuing, quote, warnings in the clearest terms to prevent similar incidents from happening again. If we as a nation want to live in peace and tranquility, we must constantly increase our deterrent capabilities. In these difficult times, we are leaving absolutely nothing to chance regarding the security of our borders and airspace, he said. Turkish Minister of Foreign Affairs Hakan Fidan on Wednesday conveyed in a call to his Iranian counterpart Ankara's protests, the Reuters news agency reported. NATO condemned Iran's targeting of Turkey. Spokesperson Alison Hart said, adding that the organization, quote, stands firmly with all allies, including Turkey. Quote, our deterrence and defense posture remains strong across all domains, including when it comes to air and missile defense, Hart said. United States Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said there was, quote, no sense that the destruction of the ballistic missile would trigger NATO's Article 5 clause, which outlines that an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all members. Incirlik Air Base in Turkey is used by foreign military forces, primarily the U.S. and other NATO allies. The base is under the control of the Turkish Air Force, but operates as a joint Turkish-U.S. air base. Incirlik was a critical logistics and air support location for the U.S.-led operations in Iraq during the 1991 Gulf War, and later as a cargo hub for Iraq and Afghanistan operations. Turkey denied the U.S. permission to use it for the U.S.-led 2003 invasion of Iraq, but was heavily used for anti-ISIS attacks from 2014. So the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, has denied the U.S. use of its bases for what it's doing now, is not a new thing from a NATO member. Turkey did it in 2003, denied U.S. permission to use it for its invasion of Iraq. So that's a little bit of history I was not aware of until I read this article. So again, we support efforts to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions. We weren't consulted, neither was the UN, and we don't agree with an illegal undeclared war. And a NATO country has been targeted already. And therefore, if that continues to happen, Article 5 could be invoked. And therefore, as a NATO partner, we are obligated to meet that. Well, we are obligated to meet that obligation, for lack of a better word. We're obligated to uphold our commitment. Nothing about this is confusing unless you want to rent a guide and a backpack for a 3-day trek in the woods in order to misunderstand it. Now, to be fair, Prime Minister could probably be doing slightly better on communications. If you listen again to everything that he says and puts everything in context and you can analyze and whatnot, you figure out what he's saying and it is very clear. But it needs to be able to be said as clearly as this person that has background in international trade. in international trade law has been able to express it. And to that end, Evan Scrimshaw had a column the other day that some people may view as harsh, but he does have some actual good points in there. And this is things, as a communication expert, that the Prime Minister's team should be looking out for. Now, in this, there is, I think, a little bit of miscomprehension, but maybe. But I think the general point here is correct. Mark Carney has just refused to rule out joining military action against Iran and press availability in Australia. In the same spirit, I am refusing to rule out losing my fucking mind. There's no reason to lose your mind over the statement. There is, perhaps, reason to lose your mind over the lack of clarity of communications. Carney is having to weigh a lot of very complicated things as he handles Canada's reaction to events in Iran this past week. But at the end of the day, he is coming out of this looking diminished and confused, all because he has no effective or coherent strategy on comms. He's backed the strikes, but then ever so slightly hinted he did it regretfully, and now he's saying he's not ruling out intervention after Anita Anand said we had no intention of intervening on Monday. Okay. This is what that muddled reinterpretation of what Mark Carney is saying can lead people to believe, especially if they are not listening to everything that's being said. Now, I don't suspect that Evan Scrimshaw would not listen to everything that's being said. He's usually a pretty thorough guy. But that comment about hinted that he did it regretfully, it's not, the word regret has, two significances potential. There is, I regret, as in, another way of saying, I'm sorry. And then we do this with regret, because we're doing this because we are bemoaning a certain situation. And in the case that the Prime Minister used the term regret, it's bemoaning. We have to take these stances with regret because, as the Prime Minister said, the international rules-based order has failed. Right? All the systems and mechanisms that we have put in place to prevent us from getting to this point have failed. So the regret is not I made the first statement that a lot of people interpreted as we came out in support of the strikes. And now we regret having doing that. No, so we had to express some type of support. And again, the support was not for the strikes. The support was for containing Iran's nuclear program and stopping Iran from being an exporter of terrorism. And we regret that we had to put out such a statement because the world order has failed in preventing us from getting to this point. You have to be very careful about what regret meant in the context in which he used it. And again, probably with the point about comms is if this maybe wasn't done as fast, or if they had more time, or there was a very specific points person on comms relaying those messages, rather than a very specific official, rather than the minister, rather than the Prime Minister speaking for the government on this particular point, and they had more time, they might have chosen another word but regret, because the word regret is so easily to be misinterpreted. And this is where we're was talking when Evan Scrimshaw here is saying no effective or coherent strategy on comms. This is what he is talking about here. Now, there are real reasons to think that Carney has a more complicated considerations at play here. There's an economic relationship with the Americans at play. Bombs are hitting other NATO allies, which might necessitate some form of Article 5. And in general, it's worth noting the vast sum of things Carney knows that we don't is immense. But it's also unacceptable that I'm stuck pointing all of this out. Carney could and should have said something much firmer that didn't actually limit his mobility if things severely and substantially changed, such as, quote, barring substantial and immense changes in circumstances, we will not be involved militarily as we haven't been, does not rule out further actions, but it looks like it does and doesn't cause political problems. Maybe that would have indeed been better messaging. Obviously, if Iran bombs a Canadian embassy or there's an Article 5 invocation, we gotta be in this fucking mess. Those are obvious and not even worth talking about, and Canadians would understand that. But leaving the door open to intervention makes it seem like we'll do it if Trump asks hard enough, which I'm confident is not what he means. But this is the problem for Carney. I can guess at what he actually means, but it's on him to fucking tell us, not just expect us to take it on faith that the main meaning of his words isn't actually what he means. That is definitely an element in the comm strategy that is lacking. There are clearly moments when Carney wants the job of being PM to be separate from the job of politician. Carney wants us to follow where he leads, but he doesn't get that that comes with expectations, answers to questions, and yes, scrutiny of those answers. Carney wants to be trusted and left alone to get big shit done, but he's not giving us enough to trust him. On economic management, you can maybe argue he's earned the room of a take-it-on-faith approach to his decisions, but on foreign policy, it's a contemptible approach to this work and one that will end with us on the opposition benches sooner than we need to be. Quote, if you're going to do this damn silly thing, don't do it in this damn silly way. I'm sure Carney, a graduate of Oxford and a former Bank of England government, will recognize this quote from Yes Minister. In a fight about reducing bureaucracy, Sir Humphrey decided to impart some wisdom on his political master, and it's the only sentence I consistently think about when I think about Carney. I don't think he's doing that many damn silly things, but the number of things he's doing in damn silly ways is immense. One of those ways, perhaps, was announcing that C5 bill without having first consulted Indigenous communities and then afterwards having to go on a big damage control tour. Had he maybe decided to take a couple of extra weeks before tabling that bill and passing it to get his first legislative win, he could have avoided all of that fallout. I don't think he's doing that many damn silly things, but the number of things he's doing in damn silly ways is immense. It's far too high because Carney is a PM focused on outcomes and not form. He has no problem appointing candidates for by-elections, say because he doesn't care about local party democracy. He cares about getting good people into parliament. An outcome, not a process. And as we say on the show, often, sometimes it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. You gotta care as much about the outcome as you do about the process to get there. Or got to care, in this case, you care as much about the process to get to the outcome as you do about the outcome. Comms is not something for other people to care about. It's a crucial part of the job, and it's a part that Carney's outright neglecting. His treatment of the press this week was reprehensible, and the fact that he's now taking such a cavalier approach to answering this question is yet more of a sign that the government isn't just spending. Let's try that again. His treatment of the press this week was reprehensible, and the fact that he's now taking such a cavalier approach to answering this question is yet more of a sign that the government isn't spending enough time thinking about their message. Anybody just seeing that headline will think that we're considering joining in an ill-advised and absolutely bereft of exit plan military act without further provocation. Quote, well, that's not our policy, I can hear advisors yell, to which my response is simple, don't give an answer susceptible to fucking misinterpretation. Knowing how the press will interpret the things you say is literally the job. If you don't want it to be the job, you can leave and go and make 7 figures in finance, but it is the fucking job, and it's absolutely incumbent on Carney and his team to know that refusing to rule out strikes would lead to this shit show, and either they knew it and let him say it anyways, or they didn't. Either way, it's not acceptable. Carney's entire argument is that he's a serious man at a serious time. You can't make him look like an indecisive flip-flopper and expect that argument to hold. In its full context, the answer is not actually a problem, but assuming that the press will not take the most salacious parts of the answer is an assumption we cannot make. That is definitely a problem, and a persistent problem, in the communication strategy from the Carney Liberals. And I just do not understand why it is that the Liberals are so terrible at communications. Trudeau had the exact same problem. Now, when he's talking about having treated the press terribly, there was that moment, I'm not sure if I showed it, but there was a press conference where somebody was talking about what the official from India had said about um, India being done with transnational repression, which is a comment that everybody, the Minister of Public Safety, I think it is, Gary Anand, Minister of Global Affairs, Anita Anand, and the Prime Minister themselves have all walked back from and said, I wouldn't say it like that. We do not agree with that assessment, all that type of stuff. And the journalist had asked a question, and then Mark Carney said, well, that's not a quote. And then he says, well, I can read the quote. And he says, well, I mean, we can talk about, you quoting something that is that was in the press conference that you were told was not for attribution or something of the sort, because the name of the official was given, and they were not allowed. One of the conditions of getting that background information was that they were not allowed to name the official. Mark Carney, in that exchange, suggested that what was said was also not for quoting. That was not true. According to the media advisory, and this is Stuart Benson from the Hill Times that picked this up, the media advisory itself says, Government of Canada officials to provide technical briefing on the Prime Minister's travel to India, Australia, and Japan. Ottawa, Ontario, February 24th, 2026. Media are invited to a technical briefing by senior government officials on the Prime Minister's upcoming travel to India, Australia, and Japan. Information provided at the technical briefing is for attribution to senior government officials. Audio and visual recording of the briefing for the purpose of broadcast is prohibited. So, information is for attribution to senior government officials. It does not say that you cannot use a quote from those government officials or that the information is embargoed. It says that information provided, if you're going to use it, has to be attributed to senior government officials. So, in that exchange, either the Prime Minister did not know, was confused, or deliberately misled. We don't know which is which. That when that journalist offered to read the quote, suggesting that the quote itself was one that could not be repeated publicly, was not exactly true. Another communications error in this particular case. Evan Scrimshaw continues. Carney understood the power of statements when he was a central bank governor. He spoke rarely, but the whole concept of forward guidance was that the market would hop, skip, and jump into place at any word Carney said if he told him what he was going to say was important. He needs to remember that ethos now because he cannot be this fucking loose with his words. I like Carney, and my instinct isn't to criticize him, but at the end of the day, I am not the person that Carney needs to be worrying about losing. There's a wide swath of the country that will not have endless patience for the incompetence and arrogance of thinking that the country will take what they can get, not demand more. I proudly voted for Bruce Fanjoy in April 2025, and if there's an election anytime soon, I will do so again. But if the image of this government as smug bastards who do what they want for whatever reasons they fucking feel like cements itself, Bruce and about 50 other good MPs who have done nothing wrong will go from the government benches to the unemployment offices. It's plainly fucking unacceptable to make these mistakes just because Carney doesn't care about process. I don't think Carney's preparing to offer Canadian troops to Trump's nonsense willingly, but that's not what he said. He said he's not ruling it out. The fact that so many Carney press conferences need to be cleaned up isn't acceptable. It's not. And if there's nothing else I can do for this government, then I'll happily do my best for Humphrey and simply tell them to stop doing damn silly things in damn silly ways. Will they listen? For all our sakes, they better. There you go. So some harsh critique, but not necessarily unfair. He is saying things in such a way that do open the door for them to be misinterpreted. And given that he is very aware and the team is very aware that there are people looking to misinterpret everything he says as much as possible and twist it and torque it to give it new meanings, um, the words chosen when you shape the message probably should be chosen in consequence to try and eliminate that possibility of misinterpretation as much as possible. And it definitely could have been pointed out at the time instead of saying it's just a hypothetical. So hypothetically, anything is possible. I guess we have to, it is possible and we can't rule it out. Instead of saying, as this war is expanding, right? There could be a time at which a NATO ally not participating in Operation Fury could be targeted. And if in those cases Article 5 were involved, we might have to look at what would be needed. Or if a Canadian embassy was struck, we might have to look at what was needed. Or if Canadian soldiers were in harm's way, we might have to look at what is needed. But if ever that would happen, that would not be in the context of Operation Fury. Again, something like that could have been said, or something like what Evan suggested in his piece could have been said. That doesn't even give as much as that. But yeah. Barring substantial and immense changes in circumstances, we will not be involved militarily as we haven't been. Could have been a better way to phrase that. So yeah, more work is definitely needed on that. But there is no lack of people willing to misinterpret. And one of the reasons I made the comment about the use of the term regret is I wanted to bring it to you here. Yesterday on Power and Politics, Peter MacKay, former Minister of Defense, had a few thoughts on what it is that Mark Carney said. And if you will listen to what he says, again, the way that he frames it has some very interesting reinterpretation.
Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada won't categorically rule out military action in the Middle East, and that Canada stands by and defends its allies when called upon.
You've asked a fundamental hypothetical in a conflict that can spread very broadly. Today's events, recent events, point to that. So one can never categorically rule out participation. We will stand by our allies when it makes sense. There's a distinction between the offensive acts that were taken and are being taken by the United States and Israel, that were taken by them without consultation with Canada, with other allies, and we're not party to those actions. But we will always defend Canadians. We will always stand by and defend our allies when called upon.
Just this hour, reporters asked the Chief of the Defense Staff, Jenny Carignan, whether Canada would participate in the U.S. mission.
We are not talking about participating to Epic Fury per se. This is not a mission that we are considering. However, our Gulf partners may require defense and support. So within that context, these would be the type of military options that we could consider.
The Power Panel is here with their analysis, and to break things down, Supriya Dwivedi was an advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Peter MacKay is a former Conservative cabinet minister. Andrew Thompson is a former NDP cabinet minister in Saskatchewan. And Shachi Kurl is the president of the Angus Reid Institute. Peter, I'm going to start with you. What do you make of what you've heard from Prime Minister Mark Carney about sort of this question that was put to him?
Well, that clip sounded very clear, Katie, but over the last number of days, there have been
seemingly contradictions. We support the air bombing campaign and what's happening right now, Israel and the United States, but then there was a bit of double clutching by his ministers of foreign affairs and defense saying, well, we need to cease the bombing campaign, revert back to diplomacy. The Prime Minister himself rightly said that, those are preferred options, said he was regretful about supporting this campaign, that it's come to this. And then today or yesterday, depending on the time zone, said that we may get involved, even though we haven't been asked. So there are some confusing and not too clear statements with respect to the Canadian government's view of what's happening in the Middle East. Of course, there are concerns about this becoming a broader regional war. The fact that Iran has launched missiles at some 11 countries within the region, some of those said countries are now talking about retaliation, as you would expect. And so this is a tinderbox. There's so much volatility happening there. We saw the sinking of an Iranian ship, the first time that in a conflict we have seen such a sinking since World War II. This is really uncharted territory in many ways, even in the context of recent conflicts. And this has global consequences, to be clear. And so you would hope that the government of Canada would have clear messaging on this. And I think that is not something that that Canadians should not expect from their government on something this serious.
Supriya, do you agree with Peter's assessment about the messaging?
So there you go, kids and cubs. You can see there, Peter MacKay. If somebody's trying to have it both ways, it's him there. Actually saying, well, that clip was pretty clear, but they're like, well, yeah, you should listen to the clip, not to the reinterpretation of the clip that then becomes a headline that appears in a publication that is probably heavily owned by Chatham Asset Management Group, who really, really, really need you to believe that the Prime Minister is fucking up at every possible instance. And then, the Prime Minister is right about this, but that, and the way that, again, says that the Prime Minister said he regretted. And it's like, there's a lot of things in the way that Peter MacKay is framing his assessment that don't actually line up with reality. They line up with a reality that the Conservatives would like you to believe is the reality for them, what they're going to say and do next to work. But it's not actually reflective. And I saw a comment here by Kit Saucy saying that, or Kit Linda, I disagree with Evan there. I think Carney is more treating the public like people who are intelligent and can understand important concepts. That may or may not be true. He is. However, that is true of most of us. It's not necessarily true of all of us, but it's probably true of most of us. But the important part here is not necessarily those who may or may not be able to understand, but those whose paychecks depend on not understanding, and the amount of influence that they have on the understanding of those who don't listen to the full clip. Right? People are busy. They run to the media for a reason, because they don't always have time to go to the source material. Or they placed trust in people that do take the time to go look at the source material, and they place their trust in them that they will accurately reflect the source material. That's one of the reasons that we on our show show you so much of the source material. And we tell you where to find it, and to go look for it. That's why we give you the names where we find our pieces, and we give you the name of the journalist, or not, so that you can go look it up for yourself. Right? Because part of our, again, the way that our ethics and the way that we do stuff is that we do not want to insult your intelligence. So We don't want to take shortcuts. We don't want to have the lazy. We're not afraid of doing the work, the hard work of listening and trying to capture the nuance and not first assume the worst of everybody. Right? So we try to give some grace, right? We did it the other day when we're talking about Pierre PoiliOVER's tour, right? And comments about both of the leaders being away and both of their wives being on the tour. It's like, don't criticize Anida traveling with Pierre PoiliOVER on his tour of Europe when we know that the Prime Minister's wife is on his Asia Pacific tour with him, and vice versa. They've both brought their families. That's fine. They're allowed. Right? Even with Pierre today, we realized that we had maybe been a little harsh because he did get to give a speech. It was not just photo ops. He's not going to come back with results, clearly. And he doesn't seem to be meeting with people that would be able, he's not meeting with contacts that he has over there that he'd be able to come back and have a meeting with the Prime Minister if we do have this new sort of goodwill cooperative relationship and say, while I was there, I met with these people and these are things that they said that they could bring to the table that might help. It does not seem he's there to be doing that. So how productive this is for his state mission of wanting to be helpful to Canada is one thing. How helpful it is for him to maintain his hold on the red meat base until such time as at least the Kuzma review is done, and then he can complain about that being crap because we made too many concessions. If we even get to a deal at all, because as the Prime Minister said, no deal is better than a bad deal. So we could walk away from the review discussions that seem to be ramping up right now with nothing. He's reserving that. But did he come back with anything that could be helpful in that process? Probably he will not be. And as he's posting tweets out there and say, well, the Prime Minister, out of everything, he's gotten one deal. Can we have some result, please? 5.5 billion with India, another 10 billion with Australia. Right? The Windsor plant is open. The submarine deal is happening at speeds never seen before, as the Prime Minister promised. The submarine deal might generate auto investment by the winner. It could, and it seems to be generating investment on having a spaceport. These are results. PoiliOVER, the highlight of the trip was delivering her speech within the context of the Margaret Thatcher lectures at a think tank, at which Liz Truss was in the audience. The results are a little light. So yeah, that's some of the stuff going on here with regard to some of the reinterpretation of the words. That the Minister of Defense came out and said what she said, added some meat to the bones of the statement, made it a little more clear of what not ruling out would look like or could look like specifically. If you listen to that in addition, it seems again, oh, okay, we're freaking out for nothing, but you have to assume that the people that are intentionally jumbling up the message and giving it interpretations that they should know better that the Prime Minister never had in order to push the fear and the ouch button to get the clicks, the likes, and the donations. You can't leave them the opportunity to do that. And messages probably need to be shaped with a little more care. Now, in all fairness to the Prime Minister, this is a very rapidly evolving situation. And if we're talking about stories that are changing, it's not like the story on the side of the United States is stable either. Right? They keep on changing their story about why they went in. I mean, the other day we had Netanyahu saying, "I've been dreaming about this for 40 years." Oh, so this wasn't then necessarily a spur of the moment thing, right? This wasn't because, oh my God, we thought that the Iran nuclear program had been completely obliterated, though everybody in intelligence said at the time that it was not obliterated. It was at most maybe set back maybe like 8 weeks or something. That was in June. And now here we are in March. Oh my God. I know I told you it was completely obliterated, but they were 6 away. Again. For the 7th time since 1995. Just weeks or days away from having a nuclear weapon. Industrial grade enriched uranium. We had to pre-strike in case they planned to strike. A lot of people making analogies that, I thought he was going to attack my neighbor who is my ally, so I went and I burned his house down. You can't do that. You can't. I have a feeling. I've seen him arguing with my neighbor on the other side, and well, I had a feeling that things got a little heated, that he was going to do something, so I burned his house down first. It doesn't work that way. You can't do that. So yeah. Again, if anybody should be criticizing someone that does not have a stable message, that doesn't seem to know what they believe and what they're in for, we should be criticizing again the person south of us, not our own prime minister. But maybe in addition to saying we see the world as it is and not as we would like it to be, the prime minister might want to add something to that, as we see the world as it is in the moment at which we are looking at it with the best information we have at that moment. And then the fact that statements are evolving as the situation evolves. Don't make it sound like he's flip-flopping or all over the place, but then make it look like make him look like he seems that as there's new information coming in, he is adjusting. And there are a lot of people in the media, of course, who said, well, if you've got a clear and principled position, your position is the same no matter what. Some of it, the undercurrent, your main drivers, but an evolving situation should have an evolving response. That should be considered natural, not some form of weakness. Well, you haven't said the same thing yesterday as you did today. Well, if you haven't noticed, things are much different 6 days later than they were on day one. At the moment that the strikes first started. The pieces on the chessboard have moved. There are many more players involved, and we've had 5 or 7 more different rationales from the United States since then. Now they're talking not about 5 to 6 weeks, but they're talking about maybe 8 to 10 weeks now. And now it's so long as we haven't reached our objectives, which again, very familiar because that's the same line that Netanyahu used in Gaza and the same line that Putin is using in Ukraine. And how long has the Russian special operation in Ukraine been lasting? How long is the Israeli special operation? Because we can't call them wars. So we call them special operations in order to bypass the authorities that one should seek, but doesn't. It's the same lines. No, this won't be a forever war. We will keep it in there until our objectives are met, and our objective is complete and total surrender from Iran. That's interminable. That's forever war. Much like Pierre PoiliOVER turning around and going, well, I don't understand why it is that we're surrendering right off the get-go when it comes on trade. We should be opting for tariff-free. We were opting for tariff-free, or at least no more tariffs than we already have, because we've never had a tariff-free deal with the United States. But no more additional tariffs. That was the original goal, and then it became very clear that that was not on the table. And since we are dealing with the world as it is, not as we would like it to be, we didn't capitulate or surrender on that. We just realized that that's not going to happen. So why would we waste our time trying to pursue something that's not going to happen? He still claims that there's a world in which he can get a completely tariff-free deal, to which I keep on reminding everyone, the only tariff-free deal that the U.S. ever put on the table was 51st statehood. So I'm not sure, again, what magical powers that Pierre believes he has that makes it such that he can get a tariff-free deal, something we have never had with the United States. And basically saying, if the United States, I'm going to go down there and make it clear that we do have stuff that the United States wants, even though the United States won't acknowledge that. And if they want some of our stuff, then they need to give us something that we want, and that's tariff-free deal. Yeah, because that's going to work for you, and nobody's ever thought of that before. That hasn't already been tried. At some point, you got to realize that 1 year after, things are not the same as they were. And if we don't have a trade deal yet, there's a reason. 7 days after the start of this war, things are substantially different. I think 15 other countries have now somehow been involved in some way, shape, or form. When we started, it was just 3. Things have changed. Things evolved. Positions do with that as well. The Canadian conservative movement, in terms of at least press, MPs, and punditry, appears to want to keep on operating in a fantasy land in which things remain constant forever. And therefore, any evolution in position is therefore confusion and flip-flopping and inconsistency and hypocrisy, rather than just acknowledging that reality has changed over time, as it tends to, because that's life. All right, before we go, kids and cubs, today, the official start date of the Paralympic Games. Very excited about this. If you remember, I think on February 2nd, we had Devin Haru come on to our show to give us a quick 30,000-foot view of what we could expect and who we could look out for there. But opening ceremonies are starting today. And according to Paralympic.ca, Canadian Paralympic Committee, stating that with Canada's Paralympic athletes just days away from competing at the Milano 2026 Paralympic Winter Games, new national research shows increasing support and fandom for parasport, the Canadian Paralympic Committee shared Wednesday. According to the study, Canadians are heading into Milano Cortina 2026 with growing enthusiasm for the Paralympic Games and a strong understanding of their broader impact on society. The Paris 2024 Paralympic Games set a new benchmark, with more than 11 million Canadians tuning in to watch the Paralympic Games on CBC Radio-Canada. That momentum has continued, with nearly 40% of Canadians now considering themselves fans of the Paralympic Games, with 7 in 10 believing fandom is growing nationwide. Quote, as we prepare to cheer on the Canadian Paralympic team in Italy, this exciting new research shows Canadians are supporting the athletes who proudly represent our nation on the global stage more than ever before, said Karen O'Neill, CEO of the Canadian Paralympic Committee. The findings point to a country that is not only watching the Games more, but also caring more about what the Paralympic Games represent, the power of parasport to remove barriers, influence systemic change, and provide more opportunities for people with disabilities. This support is monumental and will be critical as we seek to offer more opportunities for people to access parasport and receive the support they need to reach their potential. Paralympians bring Canadians together around performances that challenge expectations and showcase world-class athletic performances. Those who watch or follow Paralympic sport are significantly more likely to support people with disabilities through actions such as donating, raising awareness, or advocacy. 9 in 10 parasports fans reported engaging in these behaviors compared to 7 in 10 Canadians overall. These findings align with international research from the International Paralympic Committee, reinforcing the Paralympic Games as a memorable driver of positive attitudes towards disability and playing a unique role at the intersection of sport, culture, and social progress. This study was conducted in October 2025 in partnership with the International Institute of Sport Business and Leadership at the University of Guelph, utilizing a national panel of Canadian consumers through Léger Marketing. Following Milano Cortina 2026, CPC, or the Canadian Paralympic Committee, will share post-Games research examining how the Games influence Canadian attitudes, behaviors, and perceptions of disability to ensure the impact of parasport is measured, understood, and strengthened over time. As the Canadian Paralympic team prepares for Milano Cortina 2026, fans are invited to show their support through #FillTheStands, the Paralympic Foundation of Canada's fundraising campaign for the Games. By reserving a virtual seat, Canadians help fund the training, equipment, and competitive opportunities required for Paralympic success. Support directly addresses the cost barriers that limit access to parasport. Quote, parasport requires significantly higher investment due to specialized equipment, training environments, and support needs, said Scott Sandison, Executive Director of the Paralympic Foundation of Canada. Without sustained funding, we risk leaving Canadians with a disability on the sidelines. Fill the Stands is just one way Canadians can show their support, not just for the team competing in Italy, but for future para-athletes who will get to experience the power of parasport in being physically active. And here I'm going to include in the chat for you a link to Fill the Stands if you would like to sponsor this initiative with your dollar by buying your virtual seat. There you go. Please do. This is definitely something that's worthwhile. People across the country can also support by watching the Paralympic Winter Games on CBC Radio, the official broadcaster of the Games in Canada. With more than 120 hours of broadcast covering an additional 800 hours of live streaming, it is easier than ever to access Paralympic Games coverage. Audiences can tune in for CBC Radio Canada's coverage of Milano Cortina 2026 from March 6th to 15th on CBC and CBC Gem in English and on Radio Canada and Ici Tout TV in French. The Milano Cortina 2026 Paralympic Winter Games take place March 6th to 15th with Canadian athletes competing in all 6 sports: para-alpine skiing, para-ice hockey, para-Nordic skiing, para-biathlon and para-cross-country skiing, para-snowboard, and wheelchair curling. There you go, kids and cubs. And of course, the Paralympic Games have their flag bearers for Canada, and they were announced a few weeks ago, but we will tell you who they are. And that is Tyler McGregor and Natalie Wilkie. Actually, they were nominated both February 27th. I thought it was a little longer than that. But yes, according to the Paralympic Committee again, Canada's para-ice hockey captain Tyler McGregor of Forest, Ontario, para-Nordic skiing star Natalie Wilkie of Salmon Arm, British Columbia, have been selected as Canada's opening ceremony flag bearers for the Milano Cortina 2026 Paralympic Winter Games, the Canadian Paralympic Committee announced Friday. Heading into his 4th Paralympic Winter Games, McGregor is a well-recognized leader within the Paralympic movement. A co-captain of the Milano Cortina 2026 Canadian Paralympic team, he holds 2 Paralympic silver medals in 2022 and 2018, and a bronze in 2014. He is also a 3-time world champion, most recently in the 2024, alongside his para-ice hockey teammates. Quote, "The Canadian flag represents resilience, courage, and unity, values that define the Paralympic movement and Canada's team," said McGregor. "It's the honor of a lifetime to carry Canada's spirit onto the world stage at the Milano Cortina 2026 Paralympic Winter Games. This honor reflects the support of my family, friends, coaches, teammates, and community who have stood beside me throughout this incredible journey through sport and life. I'm filled with pride, deep gratitude, and a tremendous respect for the opportunity to represent a team that truly reflects the very best of Canada." With 7 Paralympic medals over 2 Games appearances, Wilkie is one of the world's most successful para-Nordic skiers. She was one of the breakout stars in Pyeongchang in 2018, winning a medal of each color in her debut games at age 17. She followed it up with 4 more at Beijing 2022, 2 golds, 1 silver, and 1 bronze. She is currently the reigning parabiathlon crystal globe holder as the overall champion in the women's standing category. Quote, I'm incredibly excited and honored to be named Canada's flag bearer for the opening ceremony, and to share this moment with Tyler McGregor makes it even more special, said Wilkie. I remember watching my coach Brian McKeever carry the flag in 2018 and seeing how proud he was during the ceremony. So to follow in his footsteps and hold that same honor is amazing. I'm grateful for this opportunity and so excited to wave the flag for a country I'm so proud to represent. The opening ceremony will take place in Verona, which is not a competition cluster for the Games, because of its location, which would require significant travel for all Canadian team members. McGregor, Wilkie, and all their Canadian teammates will not attend the opening ceremony and instead be celebrated in their respective villages. Quote, a huge congratulations to Tyler and Natalie on their much-deserved selection. They are both such accomplished athletes, leaders in their sports, and incredible representatives for our country, said Catherine Gosselin-Després, Chief Sport Officer, Canadian Paralympic Committee. Quote, with the format and location of the opening ceremony different for these games, we made the decision alongside the sports that athletes would not attend and prioritize preparation for their competition the next day. While Tyler and Natalie will not be carrying the flag in person, we will be celebrating them in their villages and amongst the entire Canadian Paralympic team, and we are immensely proud to have them lead the team into the start of the Games. McGregor and his teammates will open their Milano Cortina 2026 tournament on March 7th, taking on Slovakia at 8:35 p.m. local time at the Milano Santa Giulia Ice Hockey Arena. It will be the first of 3 preliminary bouts as Canada aims to return to the gold medal games set for March 15th. Wilkie will also hit the start line on March 7th with the biathlon sprint, the first competition on tap for Canada's para-Nordic skiers. Wilkie will race in the women's standing event starting at 12 p.m. local time. Para-Nordic skiing competition, including para-biathlon and para-cross-country skiing, will take place at the Tesoro Cross-Country Skiing Stadium located in the Val di Fiemme region. Quote, I couldn't be more excited to see Tyler and Natalie selected to be Canada's flag bearers, said Mac Marcoux, honorary captain, Milano Cortina 2026 Canadian Paralympic team. Quote, it's such an absolute honor to be selected to carry the flag and lead our team into the Games. Natalie and Tyler have truly earned this opportunity by exemplifying what it means to be strong leaders both in the field of play and as athletes representing Canada on the world stage. Congrats to them both, and I can't wait to cheer them on at the Games. Also, from the Honorable Adam Van Koeverden, Secretary of State, and of course, Olympian himself. Congratulations to Tyler McGregor and Natalie Wilkie on being named the flag bearers for the Canadian Paralympic team at the Milano Cortina 26 Paralympic Winter Games. This honor recognizes the leadership, dedication, and respect you have earned through your performance and contributions to the team. Carrying the Canadian flag at the Paralympic Games is a profound responsibility, and you will lead your teammates onto the world stage with pride. Canada will be represented by 50 athletes at the Games, and there you go. That's the information. It's a bit of shame that they're not actually going to get to go into the opening ceremony and carry the flag physically into the stadium. But again, given that the location seems to be at a place where no events are held and that both of them are competing the next day in other venues, indeed, focusing on preparation may indeed have been the wiser choice here. But it's a shame because, again, I got to participate in one multi-event game back in 1994. There's something called the Gay Games, and we got to walk into the stadium, and we were walking into I think it was where the New York Met played, and to hear the whole crowd just roar as we came in, that's the closest to the Olympic feeling I'm ever going to get, and it was incredibly moving. So that they won't get that feeling is a little bit of a bummer for them, but still, to be named the flag bearers is definitely a big honor. Now, the Games are not going to be without a little bit of controversy, and there are certain nations that have decided that they would be boycotting the opening ceremonies. And Germany, and for a specific reason, This is according to Carlos Groman in The Independent from the UK. Hopefully I can get that article completely for you here, because right now I can only see the headline. There we go. And says here that German athletes will not participate in the parade at the Milano Cortina Paralympics opening ceremony Friday. The German Paralympic Committee announced, stating their decision was made to express solidarity with Ukraine. The move highlights growing tensions surrounding the Games, particularly after Russia and Belarus were granted participation spots despite the ongoing conflict in Ukraine following Russia's 2022 invasion. Germany is now the latest nation to publicly declare it will skip the opening ceremony parade. At least 8 other teams are also set to boycott the event, while other countries have confirmed they will not be sending officials, underscoring a widespread unease among participating nations. And the Canadian government is one of those nations that has announced that they would not be sending officials. In a statement, Germany's Paralympic Committee explained their position. We have decided that Team Germany Paralympics will not participate in the Parade of Nations at the opening ceremony in Verona. They clarified that this decision, quote, serves both to focus on the upcoming competitions and to respectfully express our solidarity with the Ukrainian delegation. The committee further underscored the importance of Paralympic principles, adding, Paralympic athletes embody courage, determination, and the ability to overcome challenges, especially in challenging times. It remains our shared responsibility to visibly embody the Paralympic values and resolutely protect the integrity of the sport. Despite their absence from the parade, German para-athletes are still expected to feature in pre-recorded segments that will be broadcast during the opening ceremony. The International Paralympic Committee anticipates a record number of athletes at the Games, with more than 600 competitors expected. Final confirmation of participants is due in coming days. Among the registered competitors, 10 are from Russia and Belarus, following the controversial lifting of sanctions against their respective Paralympic committees in September 2025. 6 slots have been handed to Russian athletes, while Belarus will have competitors at the Games in Milan Cortina. Again, have no reason why that decision would have been made, but it has, and it has brought on that form of protest. All right, kids and cubs, that is all we have for you for today on our show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really do appreciate it when you do. Let's see. Because, that's advertising that we just can't buy, and you are influencers in your own circles. So thank you for that. If you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, let's see what we have here. You can help us by going to our YouTube page, and if you haven't yet, please scan that QR code. It will bring you there. Click on our subscribe button, because the more people that subscribe, the easier it becomes for people to find us. It helps us with the algorithm. And while you're there, why not click on like and share too? We provide 3 buttons for extra fun. So go ahead, have some fun. And of course, kids and cubs, if you would like to support us in other ways, this QR code will bring you to our coffee page. That's ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. And there you can give us a one-time tip, or you can give us a recurring monthly tip. If you would like to look at it as a membership, that would be good. You get to decide how many months you would like to do that, and you can cancel anytime, of course. We wanted to include that option for you after we were able to confirm that donations that come in through the YouTube channel do have 30% of the donation held back. That goes into YouTube coffers. And since we know that a lot of you are doing the Buy Canadian thing and want to support the U.S. CE Tech Bros as little as possible, but want to support us with memberships, we have definitely been able to give you a way to give us a recurring donation as you would like, that is more in line with your ethics and your values. So we have that set up there. But no matter how you donate, it's okay by us. Of course, we always, self-interest. We encourage you to use the methods that where more of your money comes to us, of course. But we don't judge. So anything donated via YouTube, we get 70% of your donation. Anything donated via coffee, we get 95 to 97% of your donation. And anything donated by making a direct bank transfer from yours to ours by using our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, we receive 100% of your donation. So those are your choices so that you can make an informed choice. So again, our page, coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, if you would like to donate that way. And if you would like to give us a direct donation, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address. And if you are not able to make a donation in the monetary form, please do not worry, because the gifts of your attention and participation are the ones that matter the most to us. And we would definitely love to hear from you if you write us at that same email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, and let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly. Please be gentle if it is constructive critique, and please make sure it is indeed constructive. We would appreciate that, because we do accept compliments and constructive critique equally, and we are happy to get them both. And of course, if you happen to have guests for the show that you would like to run by us, that would be fantastic. We love to hear about that too. Remember our Kids Who Cook hashtag for our socials. Let us know what it is that you're cooking, especially if you are making some tasty treats, and that gives us some ideas. And of course, if you have some good news going on in your life, please share it with us, because sometimes the doom scrolling becomes a little bit much, and knowing that things are going well for you brings some sunshine into our day. And I saw in the chat that we had also recently missed Kid Hyper T's birthday. Hyper T 1234, if I remember correctly, the full handle, who had a birthday. I believe it is on the 25th of February. So belated happy birthday wishes to you. I hope it was completely fabulous and beaverific, because it's always joy to see you in our chat in the mornings when you are there. So there you go, Kids and Cups. Ooh, and there have been loyalty memberships distributed. Woohoo! Yay! And now you are okay. You are making jokes about just the tip, and the tip being the best part. Naughty, 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 and I so totally approve. The kids, they grow up so fast. All right, Kids and Cubs. You threw me now. Because democracy is something that you do, remember that we have the high-speed train consultation, Auto Train. If you would like to be involved in that, that is open until March 29th. Please let them know what you think. If you have some environmental concerns or suggestions for the route it should take or anything else, please go there. They do want to hear from you. Oh, hello, our friend, Mr. Gray. Hello, saying good morning from Alberta. Good morning to you, sir. And I did get your message. Well, yes, I will call, because we do need to have you on the show, because there's some stuff going on in Danberta that we need to talk about, and some overall economic stuff as well. I'd like to pick your brain on that. So yes, we will be arranging for a screen date. It will be lovely to spend some time with you, sir. But so glad you popped in. Hi, nice to see you. Oh, that always provokes a warm fuzzy. I like that. As you know, I'm a big fan of Mr. Gray. So, lovely. Yes, I know. Yes, 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 Saucy. Yes, we will. We're working on that. Yes, and we might also have Tyler Watt, MPP. In the Ontario legislature for the Liberals, joining us. We've had him as a guest once when he was running for the position in the first election, and ultimately did not win. But the second go round, he did win, and he's being very effective. And we're in talks to get him on the show as well. There you go. All right. All right. And of course, a House of Commons petition, ourcommons.ca, petition 7148, to encourage the House to require all federal party leaders to obtain and maintain top secret security clearance to ensure they are fully informed of threats to Canada, national security, and able to act decisively to protect Canadians and our democracy. Very important, considering what's going on in the world now. And if we can apply some extra pressure, because Pierre, I guess either on his interview with Peter Mansbridge or on his recent Eurotour, still keeps on claiming that he doesn't need it. He does. He does. And at this particular moment, again, refusing to get it, at least in my opinion, sends a signal to the world that he might be open and willing to be influenced, and therefore him having it could act as a little bit of a security buffer for us. You've also spoken here about Laura Babcock, and that we should have her back. Yes, we will definitely schedule for that. But Kits and Cubs, you will be happy to know that later on today, I will be appearing, we will be recording an upcoming show that I will be appearing on for her. So watch for me on the O Show very soon, because we will be recording that a little later today. Actually, in a few minutes, actually, so I better finish this so I can make time for the lovely lady Laura. So that's what I got for you today. Again, did I put? Yes, I did put the link to House of Commons petition 7148 in there. So with that, Kits and Cubs, it could be a tough world there. Please be kind to and gentle with yourselves. And at the count of 3, can I please have you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, 3. Here you go. Ooh, yes, that is the good stuff, Kits and Cubs. And since you've asked so nicely and patriotically, because the Paralympics are on today, how can I deny you? Here you go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. And just wanted to highlight and say thank you to Kit Kat, who has sent us a little something, say, plugged you on the Bill Kelly Live podcast last night. People were naming the best Canadian podcast, and I guess you named us. So, oh my God, that provokes a nice warm fuzzy. Thank you so much. You all are so good to me, and yes, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to have Mr. Kelly on again, and hopefully this time I'll get to interview him a little bit more than he interviews me. But it was a great discussion. He's such a warm, lovely man, and has great insight. So hopefully we'll be able to have a second rendezvous there. That's all I got for you today, Kits and Cubs. Amour et bisous. And we will see you very, very soon. Like I said, watch out. There might be a bonus beaver this weekend because there's a lot to get through and because of all the news this week with regard to Iran and the Prime Minister's visits. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that was happening in Canada that we kind of missed. So hopefully I'll have a moment this weekend to do something and have another little moment with you. All right. I don't know when or where exactly, but stay tuned. I will put it up in the post sections here on our YouTube page about when to expect it and on our socials. All right. And with that, like magique, I am gone. Poof.